races.
Hi, I'm Benjamin Studebaker.
And this is David McKerracher. You're listening to Why Left. On Why Left today, I'm going to be talking about how little I actually know about contemporary politics and turning all of that into questions for Benjamin. But of course, I'll have some reels and some memes or whatever, some stuff I've seen out in the wild that gave me a sense that something important happened yesterday. If it wasn't for seeing some people talking online, I might not have been aware or made aware of what actually happened yesterday. Benjamin, what happened on January 20th, 2025?
Well, Trump became the president again, and a large number of executive orders were signed, and Elon Musk did something bizarre that got a lot of attention. That would be, to me, the three things that really stood out.
Do you think that I guess when you say that he did something bizarre, it completely leaves out of the equation whether it was intentional or not?
Well, this is part of the debate. So if we're going to go into it, then we can start talking about the excuses that have been offered up for it.
Oh, I want to be that person who offers up excuses for it. So that sounds like, okay, folks, we're talking about the Sieg Heil. Apparently, Trump did a Sieg Heil. That's what a lot of people are saying. Everybody who's
not Trump, Musk.
Did I say
Musk,
Trump?
Yes.
I meant Musk. They're fusing into one person in my brain, I suppose. But yes, he said that his heart he wants to throw his heart out at everybody, and then he just went like that.
No, he didn't go like that. He didn't throw it. He went from the heart and then straight out to the flat hand. He did not do a throwing motion. I think that's bullshit, personally.
Really?
Yeah. He didn't do a throwing motion. Now, it may be that he is so stunted in terms of how he moves his body that was nonetheless a mistake by him. But it did not look like a throwing motion at all. It looked very much like what people think they see in it. It could nonetheless have been a mistake. But if it is a mistake, it's an indication that this person is politically, socially, physiologically stunted in a way which makes him not fit for frontline politics. If you can't control your body well enough to not do that in that setting, you should not be in front of a camera if you're associated with a president, with a political party that's sitting in government. A person who would do that by accident has absolutely no business being physically the representative or the personator of anything.
I think I would agree with you if we were in the 1990s still. I think it's not our place to tell these guys why they're so good and why they're winning. It's up to us to figure out why they're winning. And I think that let me say it. This is exactly why they're winning. Is because all they have to do is something that gets blue check mark progressives to go, oh, there you go, the definitive proof. And because everybody in America distrusts them and they've already
so stupid in two directions.
For 10 years, the left has become there's a Nazi under this rock. There's a Nazi under that rock. Oh, there's a dog whistle. There's another dog whistle. And nobody, I'm not going to say nobody believes it. Democrats believe it. But outside of Democrats, most people are just like, really? Everything's Nazis to people. Trump and Elon Musk are Nazis now, right? And it's just like, if he did it because he's clumsy and incompetent, well, it's doing a great job getting everyone to talk. He said what he is doing. He said he's throwing his heart out to people. So you could say that he did a bad job throwing his heart out to people, but he said it, right? Like, I don't.
Of course, if you did want to do it, then saying something like that would give you cover for it. But really, to me, that what gets me is, of
Hmm.
course, you're going to have the Democrats will say that this means that they're fascists. And of course, that is a flat way of engaging with it. But then
Okay.
also the excuse that the right makes, which is, oh, he's just autistic. He just can't help himself. He just gets excited and does things. Come on. This is somebody who is politically extremely incompetent. He has a lot of money and he has certain competencies which have enabled him to pile up a lot of money. But this is a guy who has no political instincts. Rich people who are good at politics do not make a spectacle of themselves, do not draw attention to themselves in the ways that he does. This is a guy who, if you listen to him talk, he stutters continuously. He really struggles to do any kind of public speaking. And at this point, if you criticize the way that he presents, you get accused of ableism by the right. And I'm very
I
tired of
didn't even
that.
know that.
I'm very tired of them acting like he's a handicapped person and therefore you have to treat his rhetorical skills with kid gloves. You have to treat his political performances as not, with different rules than everybody else because ostensibly he's autistic. I'm really tired of this. They're using autism as a shield for not having to be socially competent and not having to know how to conduct yourself in a normal, reasonable human way. This is not, at all an acceptable way to excuse behavior. And I'm so sick of it being deployed by the right. Just as sick of that as I am of people going, oh, they're all fascists, they're all Nazis. Of course, that's reductive and it misses a lot of what goes on within the Republican Party, within the MAGA movement in these red states where people are upset about inflation, cost of living, and so on. But the other thing where I'm supposed to sit here and act like this is good political communication and good rhetoric because ostensibly he's autistic and therefore has to be graded on a curve, I'm really sick of that.
Yeah,
Really sick of it.
that makes sense. I didn't even know that that was part of the discourse right now. That right wingers were trying to say that. Well, all that I've seen is people saying he said what he said. And then he did something, and you could say that the execution was poor. But also, whenever people start trying to rhetoric school Trump or Musk because they're not posh and they're not mainstream media 1990s, like, I just think they know how to communicate in the post-class fractured mass better than we do. Maybe
Well,
not
Trump
better
is a
than
whole
we do
different
because
thing.
we have different goals than they do. Right? We have different goals, right? But
I don't think anybody would deny that Trump has rhetorical skills, political communication skills. Trump has made Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama laugh within the last week on camera. At the inauguration, he got Hillary Clinton laughing about renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. He got an on-screen chuckle from Hillary Clinton, and he got Barack Obama to laugh, and for Hillary to laugh at something he said on camera after all that kerfuffle about Obama shows the level of political skill in being able to draw that reaction
mm,
even with people very alive to the reality that they might be caught on camera laughing at one of his jokes. So I classify Trump and Musk entirely differently in terms of level of political skill, level of political communication skill. And I'm not using some kind of tired 90s, register here. I very much recognize Trump has political communication skills, but Elon Musk does not. Elon Musk has this fan club that just invents an endless pile of excuses for things he does that are socially and politically extremely stunted by any standard that anybody might have. He didn't become famous because he has good political skills. He became famous because he has accumulated a huge amount of money and then he has no self-awareness. So he does things that are unstrategic from the point of view of politics and from the point of view of social communication. And because he has all of this money, people invent rationalizations for why it has to be genius or it has to be ultimately smart.
mm.
But this is a whole different game from the way in which he made the money. The making the money by convincing people who want to fight climate change to subsidize your battery company, that's a whole different thing from whatever this is here.
Yeah, we can now see it on the screen, right? Like whatever this is here. So for people without eyes on the screen, it's him kind of jumping around, doing fist pumps, and being very, very animated. And of course, we'll let you all see the whole thing for yourselves and hear it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page, hit the audio button, and you should be able to hear it.
My heart goes out to you.
So this video is playing it out from the beginning.
Yes!
It's goofy as shit, that's for sure.
This is what victory feels like. Yeah! And this was no ordinary victory. This was a fork in the road of human civilization. Okay. This you know, there are elections that come and go. Some elections are, you know, important, some are not, but this one this one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you.
There you go.
My heart goes out to you.
And then what is this? Why is it continuing? I don't know. I haven't actually seen this.
And I just want to say
he does it both directions.
Yeah,
he does it both directions. There's no grabbing. He doesn't make a fist. He just holds his hand open over the heart and then goes to the flat hand. There's no grabbing. If you're doing the heart goes out to you, you're supposed to make a fist over your heart and then throw it, unleash it from your hand. That's not the gesture that goes with that. Now, he just may not be capable of making gestures that go with the things that he is saying. He may just be incredibly stunted, but this is what you have to do to excuse it. You have to make up all kinds of strange. And maybe this is the case. Maybe he really is this stunted and incompetent. But either way, it's just incredibly amazing that if you have enough money in this country and you insist upon it, you can get yourself put in this situation when you don't have any political or social skills.
I mean, yeah, well, it's the internet took over the spectacle, right? There was a spectacle that gave everybody this idea that there was a mainstream society and that there was a silent majority behind it and that it was represented by that old political spectrum established by these two parties that had two different ways of kind of dealing with this mainstream. But then we don't have that mainstream anymore, and the internet has officially taken over the spectacle. These guys are memes. These guys are literally memes. But like, what makes them, and this is part of, I guess, a deeper question about critical media theory, what makes them memes and what makes their meme ability different than, say, Hillary Clinton, who had, most of the memes about Hillary were memes that did not reflect well on her and were just like her being like, why don't people make memes about, I want memes. I want a dank meme stash, because Bernie had a dank meme stash, right? There's something about Bernie, something about Elon, something about Trump that makes them more memeable, right? And that thing is now necessary for doing something other than what Biden was doing, right? Which is kind of like this, let's return to normalcy. Let's go back to sleep at the wheel. There's a way of communicating that breaks from that old model, and it is symptomatic of the current situation with the medium, right? I'm not saying that they are very smart guys who really know how to work the medium. I think that they're something about their dispositions works better or gets through the filter of the medium better. That's what I'm saying.
Musk is certainly a very memeable person. I don't think that he benefits the campaign or the administration. I don't think that his frontline presence is politically useful. I think that he's there because he donated a very large amount of money, and it would become an issue to get him to stop. There have been a lot of leaks indicating that a lot of people inside the movement and around Trump feel this way about him. There are a lot of people who view him as a problem. I don't think that it helps. There are certainly people who do that, like when The Rock tore off his shirt, not The Rock, the Hulk. The Hulk tore off his shirt at the convention. There were these kinds of things that were very memeable and very, kind of disruptive and out of the norm, kind of emotional, big displays. That kind of stuff, I see your point, has a certain utility for these guys rhetorically, but it was not, Musk is not helpful. And while there is, I agree, the post-class fractured mass, a lot of disagreement, lots of different things that are cool in different parts of the society, no one set of norms, which is universal. Still, one of the things that just about everybody in the United States agrees upon is that Hitler and the Nazis were not a good thing.
Well, yeah.
And the set of people who disagree with that in the United States is still very, very, very small. And doing things that make it seem as if you have sympathy with that, or people around you have sympathy with that, whether by mistake or on purpose, is not politically useful, even now, even after everything that's happened. This is just stupid. The Musk thing is just really stupid. And the only reason that he is getting on stage is that he gave $100 million.
Not because he's captured the literal future, like he's monopolized all sci-fi. Like he's monopolized all sci-fi, all dreams of the future. He's as a brand, he's monopolized it. Bezos is trying with his Blue Moon project, but everybody knows Elon's the guy on Mars. Everybody knows, you know what I mean? Like he's like that he is the symbol of the future, and it's a corny ass symbol. It's I don't think anybody who thinks that he's a really smart guy or is reading Walter Isaacson's book about him and is just like super excited about him is like, I don't think they've been around for very long, or that they're really paying attention, or that they really think seriously about the future, or at least that they know anything about capitalism, right? But like he has successfully monopolize the future. Nike didn't do that. Pepsi didn't do that. Coca-Cola didn't do that. Jay-Z didn't do that, right? Oprah didn't do that.
Donald Trump has previously made explicit fun of Elon Musk. Prior to Elon Musk deciding to become right-coded and give him all this money, Donald Trump used to make fun of Elon Musk and talk about how Elon would beg him for things.
How does that address what I just said?
What I'm saying is I don't think that there's any great need on the part of the Republicans to have Elon Musk involved. I don't think Elon Musk has captured the future in this kind of way. I think that this is not really true. He is a player, certainly. He's somebody who is part of the discussion when we talk about futurism. But the things he's done politically over the last couple of years have made him very controversial and damaged his standing with huge numbers of people and made him a more polarizing figure in all kinds of ways.
You have to be a polarizing figure to be able to do what they're doing, though.
Well, there are levels and levels. There are different ways in which you can be positioned. There are a lot of people in the MAGA movement who are expressly opposed to his involvement. Someone like Batya Ungar-Sargon, who on Twitter said that she doesn't think that he deliberately was doing the Sieg Heil. She thinks it was just a mistake by him. But she has repeatedly voiced opposition to his involvement because, in her view, he's a union crusher who makes it difficult for them to successfully realign and pivot toward the workers, which is what she hopes ultimately that the thing will do.
For sure.
Then you've got the people who have different views about immigration from him, and they view him as a threat to what they want the MAGA movement to be on that issue. And then you've got the Europeans who are very, very annoyed with him because he keeps on putting out op-eds in their papers, intervening in their domestic politics, making endorsements of political parties that are considered in Europe to be on the right, quite on the right. So this causes all kinds of problems. He's considered by many people, both in the MAGA movement, in the Republican Party, and in other countries, to be this out of control rich person who doesn't know his place, who isn't aware of what he's doing or the effects that it has, isn't aware that he is now ostensibly a government official, and therefore the kinds of public statements that he makes reflect on the government of the United States, and yet nonetheless is taking out partisan op-ed pieces in German papers and British papers, speaking out against the governments, the elected governments in the Allied states. As a government official, you can't do this kind of stuff. This is not, ordinary new rhetoric, new coding. This is something else. This is a guy who has no notion of what his role is not able to understand how he fits into the system, and is just making a lot of mistakes that are eventually going to bite him in the ass.
See, I don't think that what you're saying is purely descriptive. I think that it's normative. I think that you're falling into this, like, whether we should be for it or against it, as opposed to.
I'm not talking about for it or against it. I just think it's stupid. As like if I were a billionaire,
but how do you know what's
in that
stupid?
Kind of position, I wouldn't.
You didn't major in the post-class fractured mass in the medium. You didn't spend 10 years studying that. You don't know what's stupid today. You can't know what works and doesn't work. Like, this is perverted. Like, you're saying, oh, I know that. It's like, oh, some very important, Trump used to think he was stupid or say that he was stupid. And now look, there's even MAGA people who don't like him. So what? How do you know that that's significant? Isn't the fact that they're talking about him the point? Isn't the fact that we're talking about him the point? Isn't that working for him? How do you know it's stupid?
I don't think politically, ultimately, it's going to allow him to go where he would like to go.
Where do you think he wants to go?
He would like to do. I think he wants to have influence over political policy in the United States and in these countries all around the world. And I think the things that he is doing will ultimately make it harder for him to have the influence that he wants to have. It's a political evaluation. And this is why I think other rich people don't do the things that he does. There are a lot of people who have comparable money who have made decisions not to behave this way. There are a lot of people who run companies that are in Silicon Valley, are in the tech sector, who have all made decisions not to act like this. And they have presumably their reasons. And maybe he's innovating in some way in political communication or rhetoric in a way that is so new and is so distinctive that we will all be proven wrong and it will ultimately be effective. But everything that I've seen in terms of watching people intervene in politics would suggest that this is not ultimately going to work for him. And it seems like a lot of his peers agree, because they're not carrying on in the way that he is.
But isn't that what anyone would have also said about Trump, saying that there's plenty of good people on both sides, rather than actually just full court denouncing the Charlottesville tiki torch people, right? Like, instead of denouncing them, which every Republican would have loved, he said, there's plenty of good people on both sides. And then people were like, oh, he's done for. No, he's not done for. Like, they can do these things that will get you to say, that's unwise, that's Nazi. And everybody who has like this kind of institutional political common sense will go, yeah, that's insane, that's stupid, that's not going to work. But for some reason, it does keep working.
Well, even Donald Trump has never done that. Even Donald Trump has never come up with some sort of basis for doing, or jumping around on stage and making the X. These are things that Donald Trump doesn't do. These are things making the X? Steve Bannon doesn't do. Oh, the thing where he comes out before a Trump rally and he jumps and tries to make the X with his arms and legs.
Is that what he was doing?
Yeah, he makes a jump. This is something that none of the strategists or communicators in the MAGA movement, none of them do the kinds of things that he does. What he does is completely different from what everybody else does. And, yes, in principle, somebody can do something that's completely different, and therefore they can discover, by doing something totally different, a new rhetorical technique that hasn't worked in the past. But I'm really skeptical Yeah, like there's an old video from way back, and yes, this is old and it's European, so take it with a grain of salt. But there's an interview that Margaret Thatcher does at one point with a journalist, where this journalist is asking her to make a jump. I think it's a German journalist. This is an interview from the early 80s, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, apparently on this show, the journalist asks every world leader that she interviews to make a jump, to try to show that they're human and normal and relatable. And Margaret Thatcher refuses to make the jump on the grounds that to make a jump trivializes the work that she does. And you know, she does the Margaret Thatcher thing of, you know, I make great leaps. I don't make little jumps on television, and you know, all of that. You know, now, yes, that's the 80s. It's Margaret Thatcher, but also the part of the whole MAGA movement thing is that in many regards, it's a throwback to the 80s and to 80s culture. And 80s culture has this kind of, it's more pop culture than the 80s political culture. I'll agree with you there. It's not as if it's a return to the behavioral norms of someone like Ronald Reagan or Margaret Thatcher. It is more the pop culture of the 80s being carried out by a set of elites who remember living in the 80s as younger people. But nevertheless, I do think that a lot of what gooses this thing is 80s nostalgia. And I really struggle to see how it's useful, apart from the fact that allowing him to do this, allowing Musk to be himself in front of these crowds of people, emboldened him to give the campaign more money. And that may ultimately have been a good cost-benefit analysis for the campaign. But part of the reason that they didn't nominate him to an actual post that has to be confirmed by the Senate, but instead made him a co-runner with Vivek of Doge, is that they don't think that he would survive Senate confirmation, and they don't think that he would ultimately be able to run a government department. And Doge is going to be wrapping up in, what, a year? I think they said that it's going to be done by mid to late 2026. And the reason that this has to be the case is that if Vivek Ramaswamy is going to run for governor of Ohio, which is now being rumored, the only way for him to do that is if his work with Doge is completed before that gubernatorial race, which would be in November 2026, with the midterms, I think. I think that's the date. So it seems like this Doge thing is not altogether serious, because they haven't actually concretized it as a government department in the way that, say, Bush did with Homeland Security. And it seems like you've got a couple of people that they felt the need to give something to, but they weren't confident they could really put into a solid position in the administration. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Musk will still be doing this in 4 years, but I really doubt it.
So when you're saying you don't think he'll be doing this, you mean that like they're gonna put a leash on him, kind of? Like he's going to.
I do not think he will be in the administration by the time the administration is over.
Right. Kind of like how Bannon was out real quick, right? I mean, a lot of people were.
Yeah, now they may just make him less public facing. Maybe they will reduce his public role, but I think that at this point, he has been so publicly involved to such a great degree that at some point there's going to be a major problem if he continues to be so out in front. He's going to make a mess for these guys in much the same way that Vivek and he both made a mess already for the administration by tweeting so aggressively and getting into it with the people on Twitter. And this conflicts with what you said earlier about the fine people on both sides thing. If the fine people on both sides thing was a good political technique for Trump in terms of managing his base, managing his supporters, well, then why would Vivek and Elon go and antagonize that same base by repeatedly on Twitter starting flame wars with members of that base, which they did? They went out of their way to antagonize the anti-immigration, more nativist, more nationalist part of the Trump base.
Yeah. Which is, interesting, but how does that relate to what I'm saying? Because to
Well,
me
in the
that
Charlottesville case,
confirms what I'm saying in my mind, but I haven't laid out my little framework for how I'm thinking about this, right?
yeah, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but my impression is that you think that in the Charlottesville case, Trump did something effective by refusing to condemn the tiki torch guys, in saying find people on both sides and refusing to condemn people in his base, refusing to discipline members of his base that were perceived by the media or by the liberals as being too extreme. He, in some way, signaled to his base that he would not betray them for political gain. But then Vivek and Musk, repeatedly berated and insulted various people in the Trump movement and in the base on Twitter in relation to the
Charlottesville.
thing.
So Charlottesville, you took that to be some kind of him telling them he's not going to berate them. This extreme, like the extreme right, the people with the online trolls with the tiki torches. You're saying that
he was asked to condemn the extreme right, and he refused to do that by saying find people on both sides. He refused, and then this is the thing he was repeatedly criticized for, refusing to discipline his base.
Sure. But you're saying you think that the reason he refused to denounce them was some kind of like he's winking and nudging and saying, yeah, I can work with you guys.
Not necessarily. I think that he did not want to go after people who have voted for him or who have supported him.
Okay, I see.
I don't think it was necessarily a winking or nodding at the far right.
Yeah, fair enough.
But he's not willing to go after people who have done services for him.
So that's definitely not what I think was working for him. And so now I want to just take my little salt shaker here and shake it heavily on everything I'm about to say, right? But my take on what's happening there, it has nothing to do with Trump. And also I would say here, so nothing to do with Musk in terms of like their interior intention. I'm trying to, the way I think about this is like, oh, well, what's working for this person? Like, what is it about this person that the conditions have filtered this person to the top and not other people? And it's not just because they're billionaires. There's 1,000 billionaires, right? Like there's literally over 1,000 billionaires at this point. So it's like some billionaires make their money by being reality TV stars and putting their names on tall buildings. Other people become billionaires by making you think that they're like the next Tesla, like Nikola Tesla, but instead of like being a starving scientist, they're actually just billionaires who keep buying up other people's projects that were mostly government funded and then privately profiting off of them. And also they're both rich boys born into wealth and they've used their names. But outside of like what they are telling themselves is working about what they're doing, and outside of what their advisors are telling them is working about what they're doing, my thing is with the dog whistle phenomenon, like the way that I read it is that it's the left being so reprehensible and untrustworthy makes it so that if you do something that's a dog whistle, the point about it being a dog whistle is that the majority of people don't see it as such. And so when the reprehensible extremes take it as a confirmation in their identity or as a confirmation of the speaker's identity and therefore write a bunch of pieces about it, make a bunch of tweets about it, do what we're doing and sit here and make some YouTube video about it, there's a function in the churn at the population level that is had on the mass, right? Like, so the mass is not a unified thing. It doesn't have one single effect on that mass. The mass is kaleidoscopic and fragmented and niche. But insofar as people are actively finding their identities in negation against the extreme left or the extreme right, when somebody says something like, oh, there's plenty of good people on both sides, and the left goes, see, he's endearing himself to the right. And the right goes, see, he's got our back. He actually is a neo-Nazi. You got both sides being like, see, and then you got everyone else just going, oh my God, look at all these crazy people hyping him up when that's not what he's doing at all, right? Like there's a way of speaking. I don't care if it's intentional, that let's just say it's purely accidental. Let's just say you have somebody who's like Biden, he makes lots of gaffes, but instead of them being gaffes that just make him kind of like, oh, grandpa, we want to give you a hug, they're instead like gaffes that get the extreme left and the extreme right in the American consciousness to signal boost him on the internet. And then most people who are on the internet, but their identities are kind of like in negation against people who are too online, go, yeah, fuck those guys. Right? Like nobody trusts the extreme left or the extreme right. And on the one side, they don't have the influence that they think they do, but they do have a powerful influence in people wanting to not be them. Right? And so it's like the comparison here to the Charlottesville statement, plenty of good people on both sides. It's like, yeah, no, it's very easy to see that this could be a dog whistle, a deliberate one, either one for because he's secretly a Nazi, or because, you know, there's some kind of like a cynical, oh, by doing this, and then I can always say it's autism, and then that's going to game the algorithm, but it's really going to get everybody talking, and it's going to kind of embolden this let's search for dog whistles approach that the left uses, which is what the left has been doing for the last 10 years instead of trying to win back America, right? When people are actively taking dog whistles at face value, they're not trying to win normies, right? So I guess that's where I'm coming from. So I don't see something that Trump says, like there's plenty of good people on both sides, as actually being like a wink and a nod to the extreme right, so much as functionally what it's doing is it's endearing people who don't relate to either side to them.
Well, I think people who don't relate to either side don't really care.
Trump gets more of the people who don't relate to either side than any other political candidates besides Bernie in our lifetimes. And it might only be 2% of the population more than the people who will typically show up to vote, but that's an important 2%. And that's a 2% that's not homogenous. And so like there's something working to endear him to those people.
Those people care about stuff like the cost of living, or stuff like, you know, they think that he's funny. I don't think they care about the Charlottesville issue.
I don't think that's true at all.
I
don't think that's true at all. That's missing the entire point of drive theory. That's missing the entire point of the obscene side of ideology. Zizek puts it this way. I would rather, he uses the joke of the person who, he gets a genie out of the lamp and the genie says, hey, I'll give you whatever you want, but whatever I give you, I'll give it double to your neighbor. And then he says, the guy thinks about it for a second and he says, take my eye. Right? So he'll be blind in one eye, but at least his neighbor is going to be completely blind. Right? The point is like, no, I'll go hungry to see my enemies suffer. Like the enjoyment of watching people who think that they know how the world should run go, that's not how it works, but it actually does work. That's a genuine enjoyment. I'm clearly feeling it myself. Like I want the right to lose. I want the left to lose. I want the two existing parties to go to hell, literally, for all time. But there is some enjoyment to be had at people who are like, this guy's vulgar. Nobody ever took him seriously. And now look at these people taking him so seriously. And it's like, yeah, but that's the point.
I understand what you're saying in principle, but I think this argument can be used to rationalize almost anything a person who's associated with success does. So And that would be my concern.
Okay.
Where does that argument stop? And at what point can we say that somebody may have made a mistake? If we say that the people who are associated with success, that everything they do must in some way be connected with their success.
Well, I, in this conversation so far, Benjamin, I put my salt shaker out and I shook it heavily over everything I said after that point. You've been very certain, though, and I'm saying I don't know that you can say so confidently what is or is not stupid. Saying you don't know that is different than saying I do know what is going on there.
I haven't talked about knowledge. I have given a view about political rhetoric. Political rhetoric is a very difficult thing to know precisely how it's going to land, because so much of it is situational and contextual. You know, I have given kind of my take in terms of, you know, to me, this didn't land. There's a lot of stuff that, you know, Trump will do, and I'll go, well, that doesn't suit me, but I can see how that would land for somebody else. I have a relatively large zone of stuff that is in my doesn't quite work for me, but I can see how that might work for you zone.
Yeah.
This was outside of that zone. This struck me as something that I don't think is going to work for a very large number of people. But sometimes, and I have found this to be true occasionally, I have a set of norms that come from spending too much time in Europe that cause me to be a little bit old-fashioned with my sense of what is good rhetoric or good political discourse. For instance, I think when politicians start crying or they start shouting angrily about things, to me, this is incredibly cringe behavior, like really excited emotional displays in politics. I have a little bit of a disgust reaction to it, which I think comes from hanging around British people a lot, where a kind of sober, reasonable disposition is more favorable in terms of rhetorical style and tactic. So that may be something to do with me.
We killed those people for a reason, man. Like, I don't think you should be spending so much time hanging out with them. Like, we literally had a revolution to get them off of our fucking backs, and they lost their empire, and now we have it. I don't think we should be taking our notes from Europeans. I think they should be taking their notes from us. I don't think Europeans know anything about politics today. I don't know anything, but I'm pretty sure the Europeans are like Canadians. Their entire identity is just not being Americans, and they feel so happy that they're not Americans because look at that crazy spectacle. And it's like, yeah, it's a crazy spectacle. Underneath it, though, is the apparatus that has boots on the ground in 150 countries. How's your apparatus going, Britain? How's your apparatus going, Finland? Oh, no boots on the ground in 150 countries? Okay, in the meantime, real politics is impossible because this spectacle has captured everything, right? So I'm not saying that like real politics is American politics, but I'm saying like we have to understand something else here, and that there's something human about reaction. There's something human about emotion. And the fucking elite or the fucking British bores who don't have emotion or are so snide and fucking dry in their humor. It's like, it's just fuck off, dude. Like, who gives a shit about that? Like, who fucking cares about them? They think that their posh, snobby, fake elitist simulation of some aristocratic virtue is like some kind of legitimation narrative for, oh, now they're good and they know real politics or they know how society works now. They don't fucking know anything. There's no reason to believe that they do. They don't have boots on the ground in 150 countries, right? Like it's always like, oh, America, so vulgar, so ridiculous. Oh, Trump, look at him. Yeah. Oh, well, it's working. How's it going over there?
Well, but how well is it working? Because at this point, nobody in American politics is able to get 60 senators and do very much. And anybody who wins an election in American politics, people get exhausted by the rhetorical style. It alienates too many people too quickly, whichever style it is, whether it's a kind of Obama style, a kind of Trump style, whatever it is, people get tired of it within the first 2 years. At the midterms, people tend to lose seats. Nobody's getting, FDR, Reagan, style majorities with the kinds of rhetoric that are being deployed in American politics by any side.
100%.
And in this election, it gets talked about as if Trump won this crazy landslide.
No, he didn't.
He has a tiny, tiny, tiny majority in the House, and not at all a very large majority in the Senate. A significant number of the senators that are in his majority secretly dislike the guy. So my question would be, well, I hear you that the European norms are dead and they're not coming back, and you couldn't simply transplant them to the United States and expect them to be successful. And I get that. You have a point. At the same time, I don't think that Americans on either side, any side, have found a new set of norms which enable them to cobble together the kinds of majorities that are necessary to make the American political system work. And this is why I think there is a silent majority of Americans who are just exhausted with all of the different rhetorical techniques that the different sides employ, and who are frustrated with the fact that the system doesn't work, and who see through some of these boisterous and bombastic attempts to paper over with rhetoric the fact that it doesn't work, and who recognize that this kind of rhetoric is indeed part of the reason it doesn't work, because it alienates different constituencies of people. And it's an argument I would make to criticize also what, say, AOC has been doing recently in reacting to the Trump inauguration.
I've wanted to talk
hysterical,
about that too. Yeah.
Emotional content, which strikes me as completely ridiculous and absurd and totally inappropriate for a member of Congress. Now, there's a chunk of people who will view that as cathartic, who will like that there's a representative who's expressing how they feel about the situation. And I'm sure the same is true for Trump. And I'm sure there's a chunk of Silicon Valley engineers who really do get off on the fact that that Musk is part of these meetings. I'm sure there are some in California, but I don't think that these constituencies are large enough to be politically functional. And I think that for most people, this kind of stuff makes them go, how do you expect to get anything done when
I agree 100%.
You're doing these things that alienate such large chunks of people? And I think it's a problem that afflicts every part of the spectrum, not simply the right or the left. And this is why I take your point. If we were talking about this mainly in terms of the dog whistle discussion, we could have a conversation about whether it actually means, or whether we should even be discussing whether it actually means that an American political party is fascist or communist or whatever it is that people think it's a dog whistle to. Different people, different points. But to me, It's not so much a dog whistle question as it is just a question of, is there any kind of political rhetoric or communication which is compatible with governing the country? I'm not sure that there is a solution to that. I'm not sure anyone can find that, because it's a problem that is a very deep, very serious consequence of the PCFM, of the post-class fractured mass, right? But I'm pretty sure this isn't the solution. I don't think anyone's found it. I'm not saying I've found it, but I'm pretty sure this isn't it.
I want to say so. I want to walk back what I said for our UK friends. I don't want to kill any of you guys. I don't feel good about that, the fact that we had to, and I don't think that we had to at a certain level. You know what I mean? So, but for the sake of hyperbole, I wanted to say those things, and I'm okay with being misrecognized by people who don't finish the episode. So, with that said, though, I think people do want to see adults sitting at the table and having a real conversation. I mean, we've gotten that kind of feedback from people. Like Nina said it, she was just like, I just wish that this is what the discourse was like, with politics in America, what you guys are doing already. So there is a desire for this kind of more level-headed approach. And I do like dry humor, and I do like British people. But with that said, though, the bombastic and the even resentment mongering, but also sort of vulgar jokes, I see that there's currently a deadlock between two approaches. One approach is hey, the institutions, and their normalcy from like 20 years ago, that's something that we can do again. And of course, the way towards that would be some kind of rational, level-headed, probably a bit more, well, it doesn't have to be boring. Biden just made it boring, but he could have, if you had a real orator in there, like Obama could have pulled it off. He could have said, hey, Americans, and he could have like had a real conversation with America. The real orators are still potentially possible for some kind of going back to normalcy. But as far as the not normal approach, currently, the way I see it is it's a coalition of whatever's working in the moment. I know that's kind of actually the definition of like old fascism, right? You bundle it. You take the tech bros, you take the trads, you take the memesters, and then you get a bunch of other rich people who are like giving you dark money. And you make it out like the meme thing and the spectacle is what's getting you there. But of course, there's the whole dark money side of things. But then
that could also
rhetorically,
just describe the Democratic or
I'll just
Republican
finish it.
parties at any point, right?
But rhetorically, you're just throwing stuff at the wall and doing whatever you feel like. And the main message of that genre of communication is that it's not that boring, let's go back to sleep kind of Biden approach, right? So this style, I brought it up in the Theory Underground Discord underneath my seminar. No, not my seminar. In our base braid category, in the Agora forum, I asked the question, who's a better speaker, Trump or Obama? And I was saying, for the post-class fractured mass, who's a better speaker for the post-class fractured mass? The person who says communication is possible and we're all having this conversation and it's rational and I'm actually able to communicate to the majority of America, or the person who's just kind of like talking out of every side of his mouth to kind of everybody and kind of just gaming the algorithm, but ultimately looping back every little hook on the ADHD audience. Every little hook loops back into his main 3 points, which are Democrats suck, build the wall. What's his other one? Oh, the economy was better than ever when I was president. Like, he's got 3 points that he repeats over and over and over again. And then everything else that people write all these op-eds about, these are just little throwaway comments that he uses to like catch people's attention because everyone's got a 30-second attention span. And then he loops them back into his main points. Is he doing that on purpose, or is he doing that from his gut because he has a sense for something's working about this, right? I don't know. But the same thing is true with Zizek. Everybody knows his jokes about the horseshoe and the coffee without cream and the person getting one eye poked out so the other person will lose both eyes. He's got a set of jokes. It's like at this point, if you know the jokes and you know a little bit of the theory, you know a whole lot of Zizek. But if you try to get to the bottom of him in some linear way, you try to get to the beginning of Zizek and follow him across some path, it's like, it's not going to work. It's very Trumpian. Now, I'm not saying that the solution going forward for the Agora is we're all going to learn how to talk like Zizek and Trump. In fact, I think we need to do a serious critique of both of them. But if it's an imminent critique and if it's based in CMT pills, I think at some level that's going to mean that we're going to say, well, what could be working about this, about almost everything that people find controversial. And we're going to try to derive some kind of a meta structure there. Now, that doesn't mean that we then follow suit, because there are tendencies in the medium that they are harnessing that we probably should counter, and then other tendencies that we might want to harness. But like weaving and bringing everything back to the same couple of points, as opposed to a speech that follows a chronological linear path and assumes everyone has the attention span to follow it the whole time. I don't know. I think that that's a serious conversation. That's why I started that post. But I'm not coming from the position of, oh yeah, that's it. That's definitely what works. This could all just be ressentiment on my part. I'm turning necessity into a virtue because this is already how I talk. Yeah, so I'm.
Well,
It's possible. I'm aware of that. You know.
I mean, I think you have a point with regard to the weave. The Trump weave is very much, I think, descended from the way stand-up comics talk. Stand-up comics often do a weave, and in a lot of op-eds for magazines, kind of short magazine columns, this idea of circling back to the thing that you begin the piece with has been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I do think some of that stuff has been around and is potentially tractable. And I certainly don't disagree that Trump has rhetorical skills. I don't think that Musk is proven in this department because he hasn't won elections. He hasn't by himself demonstrated political capacities or skills. He's donated a lot of money and therefore been put in a position, but it's not clear. And we know that Trump has often picked people to be in public-facing positions who have not stuck for very long periods of time. So while I think Trump has a certain level of skill in being able to construct a speech that is effective or doing a rally or a stump, I haven't seen as much evidence that he's able to pick people who will be able to ultimately succeed in the roles that he's picked them for. That has tended to be a weaker part of his repertoire so far to this point. I agree that one of the things that's very difficult about this post-class fractured mass is that there isn't a straightforward or simple, obvious rhetorical approach that is effective, and therefore it is necessary to be experimental. But I also think that rhetoric may just not be sufficient. Part of the trouble is that it just may not be possible for one person to talk to everybody in this situation. I wonder if what we might need is a multiplicity of different distinct approaches, which nonetheless at a higher level interface or interact in a way which is constructive. Sometimes you can have two people who talk to completely different audiences who nonetheless work together in some way. Even though those audiences would not think of themselves as part of the same movement, there's nonetheless a sense in which they are. Democrats and Republicans, of course, conventionally are a prime example of this. Democrats and Republicans don't think of themselves as part of the same thing, but oftentimes interact with each other in such a way that they produce a shared outcome that neither of them could produce alone. Classic example of this, very recently would be the Israel-Palestine peace deal, in which Joe Biden proposes a deal, and there's a bunch of hemming and hawing from Hamas and from the Israelis about this deal. And then Donald Trump threatens to be really mean to them if they don't abide by the deal. And then all of a sudden, they're happy to abide by the terms of the Biden deal. So in that case, there is a kind of cooperative effect between the two parties, but the cooperative effect comes ostensibly from the difference between them. It's because it seems as if Trump would have a different foreign policy. He's able to achieve the Biden foreign policy's goal. And in this way, it takes both of them, like a good cop, bad cop routine. It's because it seems as if the cops are different and have a different objective or different goal, that the person who's subjected to the good cop, bad cop routine acquiesces and gives both cops what they want. Both cops want the same thing, but they recognize that they have to cultivate different and distinct relationships.
Sure.
Now, in that case, it's with the same person, but of course, you can also do this with entirely different audiences. And this has been, for me, rather than try to talk to everybody at once, my focus has been more on, can there be different movements that would not necessarily want to talk to each other or view one another as part of the same shared project, but which nonetheless might contribute in some way toward certain objectives. In my book, The Way is Shut, where I talk about this para-party idea, there's this possibility of working within multiple different parties at once with different distinct movements that talk to different distinct audiences, but have some kind of shared understanding on certain core issues nonetheless. And this doesn't have to be talked about, and it doesn't have to be openly in public, but it could nonetheless be something which would allow for cooperation at more advanced stages, a cooperation which would not necessarily proceed from there being one figure who can talk to both at the same time. And I think, for instance, the neoliberals cultivated this. They built constituencies within both the Democratic and Republican parties, and a lot of the stuff that they built was separated. by certain cultural issues or by certain institutional barriers that existed within one party or the other. But nevertheless, they were able to concurrently build different distinct movements and bases within each. And so that's often been my thought. Is there a version of liberalism that would be better than the version we have? Is there a version of the left that would be better than the version that we have? Is there a version of the right that would be better than the version that we have? And could all of these things in some way reinforce each other because they would share certain features despite their differences?
My operating assumption since 2020 has been yes, that is absolutely necessary. That I'm not in the phase of thinking it's time to do that, because I'm still in this phase of thinking that there's some serious research that must be done into the Constitution, the contours, the inherent contradictions, the essential ones of the post-class fractured mass. And there's this weird thing about leftists, especially, though it's an internet thing. It is generally speaking just an internet thing, but it's a big problem for leftists. I think the first time I had One Dime on my channel, we had a 4-hour conversation, and I was like, this was the first time I brought a leftist on in like a year and a half, and he was talking about rhetoric and how we need to do this and we need to do that, but he was talking. And I called him on it. I was just like, man, you're talking like this is a secret conversation. And we're like sitting here like talking about how we're going. This is not esoteric. We're on the internet right now. This is the CIA's living room. Like, what do we do? What is this? We can't act like this is some backroom deal. And the internet has made it so that a lot of the most intimate conversations that we have with ourselves and others are ostensibly on the street corner. Anybody can walk by. Now, of course, an example of people talking to different audiences in different ways, people will, often try to splice that stuff together to show, look at the contradictions. They say this one thing and then they say this other thing. You're talking a bit different. You're talking about coalition building. You're talking about inter and intra-party coalitions. And it's this, there are higher angels or better angels of the left, of the right, and of the, not just center, but also of the extremes. We don't need a red-brown alliance. Like, we need a better angels of all political positions alliance. But I say that in an ontological sense, not an ontic sense. Right. And I don't mean in some universal way. I'm talking about in some generalizing way. So like I'm trying to hone in on so I'll always use the example. Conservatives could be conservative about anything, but there will always be conservatives. Right? Like what they are conservative about, what they're libidinally fighting, like pro-gun and pro-choice. Or sorry, pro-life, pro-gun. It's not reasonable to think that could change in the next 50 years, or at least in the next 20, maybe in the next 50, but at least in the next 20, that's something conservatives will care about. You have to be a realist about that. But in 50 to 100 years, conservatives could have completely different priorities based on a new sense of values. And those values could be based in a new sense of the stakes of the situation, right? If aliens were invading Earth, I don't think they'd be talking about the things that they're talking about right now as an extreme version, right? And so all I'm doing is saying that is the sense in which I agree with you. These are fundamental human dispositions. They can be re-articulated, and there can be better and worse people influencing movements and parties, right? But there's also, and potentially, new parties can come out of that kind of thing, and not third parties that only have 3% of the vote or whatever, but the kind of party that to get itself into office requires two sides so that it can kind of capture a lot of the cultural energies of the currently existing two sides, but transcend that at the same time that it breaks the current system. Like, these things are possible. They seem kind of extreme, but they're also possible. And those are the kind of possibilities we should probably be cultivating, right?
And this is something that the most well-liked American presidents are all rightly or wrongly to varying degrees associated with something like this move, right? Lincoln displaces the Whig Party and brings in the Republican Party. And at the end of Lincoln's presidency, the Democratic Party has to be something quite different from what it was before. Because before it was the party of the segregationists, after it has to become something else. In the case of FDR, the Hoover Republican Party becomes the party of Eisenhower. In the case of Ronald Reagan, a Democratic Party that was still to varying degrees associated with Lyndon Johnson and Humphrey and those types, becomes the party of the Clintons. Now it's too neat in each of those cases. There are a lot of other things at work apart from just the activities of those particular leaders. But nevertheless, the leaders that tend to have the strongest reputations are associated with shifts, not just in their own party or in the country while they're in office, but in the way in which politics is done in other movements that they themselves were not leading. They force other political movements, other ideologies and traditions to change or adapt in various ways. Or at the very least, they are seen to do that. These changes are attributed to them. And this is what causes them to have the historical reputations which they have.
So you're saying good leadership has always thought this way, as opposed to this sort of like this kind of partisan hackery that just becomes audience captured by some pre-existing demographic.
Yeah. How do you create a condition under which the opposing party, an opposing movement, agrees with you more by the time that you're dead than your own party or movement agreed with you at the point at which you started? If you really change a society, you or perhaps your movement, your group, to try to avoid overly great manning and overemphasizing the individual, by the time your group is through, you should be in a situation where even your opponents agree with you more than your supporters did at the beginning. That's the kind of change that people typically make. And so what it then produces is whole new disagreements which occur along different lines. So by the time Eisenhower is in, it's not an argument about whether there should be a pension program. There's no argument about that anymore. Social Security is going to be there. It's a question about, what should the relationship be with the Soviet Union post-World War II, a question that couldn't have been asked in 1932, because at that point it would not yet have been a relevant question in the way in which it was relevant at the end of the war, right? A question about what to do with China, a question about what to do in terms of the construction of NATO, the dealings with the Warsaw Pact, the missile gap. The issues that become significant in the 50s are just different issues by and large from the issues of the 30s. And you're in a situation where these are disagreements within something that previously did not exist. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit here to emphasize, and whenever you do an example from history, oftentimes if you're making a point, you're using a metaphor, you exaggerate certain aspects. But this is the kind of change that people should be pursuing. And when people embark upon strategies which don't have even this horizon, let alone things like socialism or, actual transformation in the mode of production, relations of production, you can't accomplish very much if your goal is to just squeeze out a win in an election, right? Get maybe 55 senators. And this is the horizon for the politics of both Trump and Obama. Neither one of them has a politics which is able to cause the other side to become what it is that they'd like to see to some degree or other.
100%. No, actually, in both.
So this argument gets made for Trump. Some people suppose that Trump is doing this and that the Democrats are changing as a consequence of his behavior. I don't buy that has happened.
I think that's one of the other things that we that makes it so we can vibe pretty well and get a lot further than I can with a lot of other people, is that sense, that basic operating assumption that actions have reactions, and that most of the actions the activist left, but I would also say the new right, engage in, create the thing that they're supposedly fighting against to increase at a statistically, I don't want to say statistically reliable as though it's predictable, but it's like, well, yeah, but we can definitely predict that upping the ante in certain ways on one side does the exact, it causes, if not an equal reaction, some kind, maybe a disproportionate reaction from the other side, but in a way that makes them more like the things that you don't like about them, So it's dialectics, I think, that did that for us.
One of the things that's really insidious about Trump and Obama is that their ways of doing rhetoric crowd out attempts to do something that would be more interesting than what they do.
Yeah.
Because they are constantly gerrymandering everything, it makes it very difficult to arrive at new constellations.
They are. So I think what I was saying, we don't know what's stupid. I think I understand where you're coming from better now. But what I was responding to is, here's another way of phrasing it. To say that something is stupid or not is either based in your criteria, and those criteria are criteria that you've developed based on your goals, or you're assuming what their goals are, and then you're measuring them against criteria that you've developed on the basis of what you think their goals are. And I think you just said what makes, what makes the most sense. They are just trying to win a term. Like, that is what it is. Not a long range vision, and it has no hope of large scale structural change. That is not on the menu, boys. Right? Like, so
some of them want it. Some of them do want it. They're just not behaving in a way which is conducive to them getting it. I do think that some of them imagine that it could do more and wish that it could and want it to do more. But so, then they do things like this.
So like Trump, okay, for instance, then Musk might genuinely think that his plan is like the real way forward to the future, and he also thinks that he's good at politics. But he is just too autistic. Like, maybe that is the actual case, but instead of using that to say we should stop being ableist, we should say, actually, don't gaslight people. Just, if you aren't fit to speak publicly, don't. Which is what we obviously should have said to the DSA people at the 2019 National Convention. It's like, none of you people know how to speak. You shouldn't be standing up here.
Right. There's a field problem. And this is a point that I make a lot about business people who try to do politics. And I make it about Vivek, too, in relation to that tweet that he put out. Like, these people have a style of communication that works in their field, but does not necessarily transfer to politics. Now, your point that we don't totally know what works in politics anymore because politics has changed in ways which defy previous assumptions. This is a valid point. But I don't think that it means that this particular set of stuff works. As someone who's tried to keep up with it and has tried to be open-minded about what might be effective now, this I don't think so. And this is why I think that Vivek and Musk are ultimately not going to prevail here. I think that somebody like J.D. Vance in the long run has a much better odds of coming out on top of this whole thing, because J.D. Vance has spent a lot more time in this field and knows the field better.
You think J.D. Vance is, I mean, I guess he's more level-headed. He's more coherent in his conversation with what was the running mate for Kamala? Tim Waltz? Is that it?
I mean, some of the stuff that he's said over the years has been totally crazy, and he went on on What's Left back in the day when Amy was running it after I left. And J.D. Vance has done some outside the box stuff. The thing is, J.D. Vance knows when a moment calls for him to seem like an outsider who might do things differently, and when it calls for him to seem like a good boy who will play by the rules. J.D. Vance knows how to make people that he meets with feel like they have influence with him, but he also knows how to not listen to those people in the moments where it would be very, very, very disastrous to listen to them. He has a savviness to him, but one which hasn't
Donald
just
Trump
resulted
saying.
in him being repeatedly accused of being a hypocrite who's unreliable and inconsistent. Someone like Harris in different rooms would say things to different people and would make people in different rooms feel potentially heard or listened to. I'm not talking about recently, because recently with the trade unions, she certainly didn't even do this. But back when she was running for senator, when she was campaigning in California, people said, hey, she has pretty good in-the-room skills. Then when she ran for president in 2020, there were all these contradictions that popped up, and it became very visible and very obvious. The thing that's amazing right now is that the people that go into rooms with J.D. Vance come out of those rooms so convinced that he understands them and is going to listen to them, that they are arguing over which one of them has a better relationship with him right now. Once, Curtis Yarvin pops up on the New York Times, and people are framing Yarvin as if he has something to do with Vance, suddenly all these other academics and activists and thinkers on the right are going, no, I'm the one who actually has the good relationship with Vance. I'm the one that Vance actually listens to. They're not going, hey, wait a minute, does Vance just have this conversation with everybody? Does he just do this with everybody? No, these are otherwise quite smart people who are genuinely convinced by their interactions with J.D. Vance that he listens to them. And who, even in the face of many other people making the same claims, still feel sure of this. That, to me, is real political skill. If you can get this many different people from this many different walks of life, and they just rationalize anything that he has done in the past, which conflicts with it. So if you point out to the kind of NatCon people, hey, wait a minute, isn't Hillbilly Elegy just a book where he slags off the workers and the ordinary people from where he's from for the purposes of endearing himself to the liberals? They go, well, that's the old J.D. Vance. He's changed. I've talked to him since then. That's real political skill. That guy, and I used to think, oh, he doesn't have it. And then I saw him handle that debate with Walz. In that debate, he just had to not seem like a kook in that debate. And he understood that. And he was able to not behave that way, because he's
100%.
actually able to convincingly behave in multiple different modes, in different situations. Whereas these other people, they think that they're supposed to just be authentic, and then they act the same rigid, dogmatic way in every situation and go, well, I'm being authentic, and authenticity is in, right? They've completely missed it. The goal is to make the person you're talking to feel like you're being authentic. It's not to be authentic. Politics has never been about actually being authentic. It's to create that feeling.
Right. And Trump's good at that too, which, switching registers. Yes. He has his, I'm doing populist speech mode. I'm doing a stump speech mode. And then he's got I'm having a real conversation with you on Joe Rogan, and I'm going deeper, and I'm making you laugh, and I'm saying interesting things. He's able to switch gears, right? And I don't know if anybody actually saw him.
What has is the Yale Law Review mode.
What's that?
Vance has the Yale Law Review mode. Vance can go into a room with academics and make them feel like they're getting heard. That's something Trump isn't able to do. There are certain limits to what Trump can do. But also, Vance would not have quite the same appeal as Trump for some constituencies as a consequence of his ability to go into lawyer mode. So there's a trade-off there. But yes, Trump is also someone who's able to convince many different constituencies of authentic intention.
That's a great little spot to run this commercial, folks. We'll be right back after this brand new commercial. And then we'll, for the rest of this, be talking about the inauguration and specifically these new executive orders. And what are the implications of those? Of course, I think we only have a half hour remaining, so we can only scratch the surface, but we're setting ourselves up for a much deeper dive. But we'll take a look at what this video that's up on the screen in a second, right after this.
Oh, hey, Dave. What are you up to?
Hello. I'm grading right now. So.
Grading? Well, what's that?
Oh, this? This is a G2 pen. It might be the best pen in the entire world because the price point is perfect for working class people like us. More importantly, cartridges are replaceable. The ink, it glides, but it doesn't smudge too bad. And most importantly, you can do that. And it's really fun.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
We at Theory Underground are not sponsored by Pilot, nor does Pilot endorse this commercial. Theory Underground is funded by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello. All right, there we go. We're back.
Hey. All right.
I thought you all could hear us for a second there, folks. But yeah, anyway, we're back. New commercial. How do you like it, everybody? We're going to be doing a lot more commercials like that coming up here. And Benjamin, just since you haven't seen the new one, it's me. It's Anne, like, coming up to me in the coffee shop and asking me what I'm doing while I'm grading homework. And I'm using this pen. And I do a commercial for my favorite pen. And then at the end, the voiceover says, it's like a robot voice. It's like a robot lady's voiceover. And it says that the Theory Underground is not sponsored by Pilot, and that, we're funded by people like you. So thank you, everybody who does make this possible. I just like the pens. I just genuinely like the pens, and we're not sponsored by them. These are just the best pens at this price point. Anyway.
Oh, Dave, have you surveyed them and told them about whether they've hit the like button?
I had forgotten to do so until about 20 minutes ago. And then I started one that says, did you forget to click the like button? And then 83% so far have said, yes, I forgot. Let me get on it. Because I forgot to even set the button. And when I forget to set the button, you know what happens? Not a lot of people do it. They think they did it. They didn't do it. But then
it's good to hear that 83% of the people who respond immediately go, of course, that's what I would like to have done. I will do it now.
It's cool, right? Yeah, thank you.
That's heartening. I'm heartened by that.
Thank you to the 83% out there. And the other options, didn't forget, but I'll do it now. That's 12%. That's also really cool. So thank you to you, 12%. And then finally, 8% said, I'll never click because I suck butts. What a tell. What a tell. We know too much about you guys now. Oliver Schultz says, I love the new ad. Top stuff. Benjamin, the beard suits you very well indeed, sir. I met Benjamin when I met you, you had a beard. And when I was going back over some old stuff and I saw that, I was like, I forgot. It's a great look. So I guess
it tends to come out in the winter.
Really?
Yeah, I tend to grow it in the winter, and then oftentimes I dump it in the summer, but we'll see.
So I guess my question now for this last segment is, what can we really do in 20 minutes? Now we have this video that's 6 minutes and 28 seconds. I think we should at least watch, the first couple minutes of it. And then I'd just like you to give me your initial sort of survey of what's happening. And then it'll be a promise for more to come for everybody else on the next episode, but also for me. I hope to find out a lot more between now and then. So maybe you can help me get my gears turning as far as what kinds of questions I should even be asking. So, but first thing I'll say is, as far as the medium goes and as far as stunts, this is fucking genius. Like it's such a move. And once again, I don't watch TV. I wasn't watching this stuff. But people were talking about it. And so generally speaking, when everybody's talking about something, it's like, oh, okay, well, something that they're doing is either working or it's working in a way that they don't want. This is probably working in a way that he does want, which is it's like a display of force, but not a force of like military might so much as a force of, oh yeah, I'm here to change a bunch of things. Now here, let me rescind everything Biden did the moment I get sworn in. And I'm not sure if that's actually what happened. Is that actually what happened? Because that's the way I'm hearing about it.
It's a big part of it in terms of executive orders. A lot of Biden executive orders were immediately reversed.
Yeah. All right, let's go. I'm going to click go.
He will head over to that table with Donald Trump saying he will head over to that table with a number of executive actions already laid out on the table in the presidential seal. Mary, Bruce, do we have an understanding of exactly what it is he's signing right here?
We don't have a full list right now, but we do know that this is going to be a tremendous effort for him to show straight out the gate just how aggressive he is being, as he has been touting all day. We know that he is signing a wide range of executive orders, ranging from rescinding any DEI or gender-related directives from the Biden administration to designating cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
Hey, Mary, let's
listen.
Signing is the rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
Is he 78?
Yes, that's the number, 78.
Thank you, sir.
With the stroke of his hand, Donald Trump there, President Trump.
So what did he just wave around there?
That's the orders that the signature makes it official that he's rescinded those orders.
So it's like a bulk rescind? Like he just did
Yeah,
delete all?
I think that's a bulk rescind. I think they've written it in orders, this number through that number are rescinded and something like that. I think that's the case.
Okay.
They mentioned the DEI orders, for instance, though that probably includes the executive order that I mentioned in my book, the Joe Biden order on DEI, instructing the government to find ways of measuring equity. This is something that has been in my life for a long time because I included this in my discussion of equity in my work. So if he has in fact rescinded that order, he has killed off something that I spent a significant amount of time dissecting, which honestly, I think it's a terrible executive order. It's very poorly written. And so I'm glad to see it go on the assumption that it has gone.
And let me see if I can remember correctly. I don't remember which of your books this was in, but I remember reading you having like this prolonged sort of discussion or analysis of equity. Oh, Isaiah Berlin. Nope, this was The Way Is Shut, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And basically like
right.
equity gets defined in this one specific way that is defined in a specific way just to make a problem for a specific conception of liberty. Am I tracking?
And not quite. Really what the
Okay.
Biden order does is it defines it incredibly vaguely with reference to so many other undefined terms that you have no idea what's going on. And so it's incredibly unhelpful. And then you have these other groups, like Race Forward or, that then posit different definitions for equity, these NGOs that do define it in various ways, which mess with the concept of equality. In various ways by trying to first turn it into equity and then identify equity with making sure that all racial groups are represented at every different level of society. So the same percentage of CEOs are from this race, this race, the same percentage of working class people or homeless people, this race, this race. They talk in terms of racial wealth gap, that kind of stuff. But the order itself is extraordinarily vague. You have no idea what's going on when you read it. And you can't actually use an order that's written that way to do anything in particular. However, you can use it as a back rationale for whatever it is that you do end up doing, because you can frame almost anything you've done as being in some way related to terms that are so poorly defined.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, he just did this bulk delete all. It's just that's quite the move. I didn't know you could do that. I thought he'd have to sit there and do a lot of different signatures.
Well, when you don't codify this stuff in the law because you don't actually get a congressional majority that's large enough to pass this stuff, and then you try to do things with executive orders, that leaves what you do very vulnerable. And of course, these Trump orders are vulnerable in the same sense. He's not making any attempt to have Congress codify any of these things. He is just doing them as executive orders. And because he's doing them as executive orders, he also can't be sure, just as Biden couldn't be sure when he signed his orders, that the Supreme Court will ultimately uphold them. So one of the things that they do now very routinely is they sign orders that they know the court is unlikely to uphold. So they can claim they tried to do things that they may or may not have had any intention of doing. So the one with Biden that was talked about all the time was this question of student debt relief, where Biden would sign these orders saying that the student debt would be relieved. But of course, the orders were written in such a way that it was very questionable whether they would survive judicial review. When the court rejects them, it's then possible for the Biden administration to say, we tried, but those bad conservatives on the court stopped us. And there's no way of really knowing whether there was actually a sincere effort to write an order that would survive that. Certainly, there was no effort to make it part of the legislative agenda of the administration. The administration did not try to codify it by going through Congress in such a way that there would be a greater chance that it would be able to withstand the review. Because part of the review will be, well, the president doesn't have the powers to do this without congressional authorization, and therefore the president needed to go through Congress. And since the president didn't do that, therefore the order doesn't hold. That's a very common way in which these orders get blocked.
Gotcha.
Now trying effectively to undo as much as he can of Joe
item,
Biden's
President
agenda
Trump
there. Let's
is
listen
a
in
regulatory
a bit.
Looks like he's got a few more
speech preventing bureaucrats from issuing any more regulations until we have full control of this, the government and this administration.
Reminiscent of something that they did last time, a moratorium on new hires.
The next item, sir, is a freeze on all federal hiring, excepting the military and a number of other excluded categories. Again,
they did that last time.
Full control.
So
that's an old order that he's brought back.
A freeze on all federal hiring?
Yeah, some of these orders are orders that he did in the previous administration. Biden got in, undid those orders with a similar kind of rescinding, and now he's going to reinstate some of them. So this happens with this. It also happens with the Paris climate deal, which he again pulls out of. They thought, oh, he won't pull out of it twice. Well, here he goes.
Okay, so a lot of it's just like, we've been here, we've done this, and this is part of what you're talking about in The Way Is Shut. Like, one of the major points, if I can take a stab at it, is just like every time change gets made by either side, it will be rescinded. Like, there is no path towards any serious changes. No one's going to get what they want to last for more than a couple of years, right?
Yeah, people are not codifying very much in the law. And then also you have this problem. It's quite severe at the level of international politics, because we have no credibility to negotiate with people when we do this. When we constantly hop in and out of treaties, people just can't assume anything from us. It's devastating to our ability to lead internationally, the fact that we continuously don't codify our agreements as treaties in the Senate, and then we just hop in and hop off with executive action like a merry-go-round. It makes us seem very silly abroad.
Is this
but it's
related?
Something that everybody does. Democrats
Everybody
and
does
Republicans.
Everybody does it. And is this similar to or the same thing as when Roe v. Wade was like never finalized? It was something that could be.
Yeah, they never put that into the law. In that case, they were relying on the court's action as opposed to executive action. So in that case, the Supreme Court made a decision, and then Congress never brought the law into alignment so that if the court overturned its decision, there would be a law that would then have to be challenged. So in that case, it was Congress never codifying the court's decision in a law of its own. Congress never passing an abortion rights law. In this case, it's a little different because it's executive action as opposed to a court decision. But yes, there's a similarity there in that you have a branch acting without sufficient cooperation from the other branches, so the action that's taken is flimsy and is easily undone.
Okay.
Control of the government is achieved, and we understand the objectives of government going forward.
Looks like he's got a bunch of dildos beside him. Going back to my commercial for G2 pens, one of the things that I forgot to mention about the G2 pen is that it does not look like a dildo. Whatever it is that Trump is using looks like a certified dildo.
Could you imagine Biden doing this? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Sir, the next item, as you announced in your speech, is a requirement that federal workers return to full-time in-person work immediately.
It's something the Silicon Valley guys are big believers in. They think people don't work well remote.
Oh, well, I mean, it's definitely true for some of us, right?
Probably depends on the industry and sector, but it's certainly something that they will have pushed for. Musk, for instance, is very much opposed to remote work.
I see.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have a directive to every department and agency in the federal government to address the cost of living crisis that has cost Americans so dearly.
A directive to address it doesn't tell them what to do. Formulate something, and we'll get back to it. Maybe.
Hilarious. It's the concept of a plan.
Thank you, sir. The next item here is the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty.
Yep, there that is.
They're stoked.
Yes, sir.
It's an accord. It's not a treaty. If it were a treaty, he couldn't unilaterally withdraw from it. He would need the Senate.
Do they just call it a treaty?
Yeah, the guy's being sloppy.
Because it's just it's a symbolic thing to be involved in the bad sense of symbolic, in the sense of just like, oh, it's sign value, right?
Well, the Obama administration underwrote it for the purposes of being able to sign on to it without getting it through the Senate. And that left it open to being unilaterally withdrawn from. And then because the Obama administration underwrote it in this way, it has never had the kinds of coercive mechanisms necessary to make other states do things. Because if it had those mechanisms, then it would have been a treaty. So it not only had negative consequences in terms of making it very easy to withdraw, it also made the treaty less binding for everybody else who participated in it, which is why it's not a treaty, it's an accord.
Okay.
Next
I just
item,
used
sir,
the word
is
in
a
a
letter
sloppy
that
way
will be
myself.
transmitted to the United Nations explaining that we are withdrawing from the Paris Climate Treaty.
The audience is kind of just wild to me. Like, the energy must be interesting being in that room because, like, when he first started signing, this is something I saw when I only saw the first like minute and a half of this video before I added it to the list of things we should talk about. But as soon as he sits down, he signs the first thing, and then this guy just yells. He's like, "Throw me the pen!" And he yells it like really loud, "Throw me the pen!" And it's just like if this was a courthouse, the gavel would go smack, 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 right? Because, but but it's supposed to have that kind of energy. It's supposed to feel a bit more like a courthouse. It's not supposed to feel like there's people in the audience yelling that they want you to sign their titties or whatever, but that's what it seems like. So
no, he's trying to cultivate that kind of relationship with the audience. You see that if you've ever watched any of the rallies. This is very much an intentional theurgic aspect of them. You're supposed to feel in the room with him. It's why he does the dance, so that he seems present in the room with you. You can see him doing that dance from very far away because of the weird jerks he does with the hands.
yeah. That's quite the signature. Holy shit. It just looks like something Sauron would do.
Looks like a skyline. It looks like a series of skyscrapers.
But it's jaggedy. It's like spiky. It's like a citadel. Oh, that person has it. Oh, sorry. Let's go back. It's almost over, folks. Here we go. I'll go back a little bit further.
Of government, again, a large number of other items, is a directive to the federal government ending the weaponization of government against the political adversaries of the previous administration, as we've seen.
I hope so. I would sure hate to see them just back and forth for the next 20 years, taking each other to court.
Well, the Biden administration made a point to try to express skepticism that this would be followed through on by preemptively pardoning people. Given what they've been saying about him, they have to do that so that they look as if they believe the things that they're saying.
Oh, he's literally throwing people pens.
Oh, see, now he's throwing the pens because people have suggested it to him. He's doing it.
Oh my God.
He will do this kind of thing. And they know that if they yell things at him, he may do them, because even if you don't end up catching the pen, you get to feel like you made him throw the pens, and then that makes you feel part of his activity.
Amazing. Hey folks, we're probably coming to a city near you very soon. Here is the tour poster. It's a draft. There's potentially going to be more on it, but this is a draft. Shout out to Will and Luke, who are the two people involved with the aesthetics here. I think that this is a combination of their work, but it's, I think, maybe more Luke. I'll know more later, but for now, the reason I'm putting it up there is because if you come and you meet up with us when we're on tour in March, which is coming up really soon, I might just throw you a G2 pen, eh?
That skyline almost looks like the Trump signature with those sharp, pointy edges.
Yeah, what are the artists that tee you up to? What are you guys doing? Yeah, it's true. Kind of looks a little futuristic. There's a tent out there. So you got the tree, you got the pine trees, you got the cityscape, cityscape sort of color scheme that I've always used, and then it says opening the Agora. And I guess I want to, before we close this thing out, just say the way that I set up the Agora definitely lends itself to a pretty damning critique. And for folks who don't know what I'm getting at here, because, well, that's all right. That's all right. Just hang on. But Benjamin was saying that his approach is not going to be to try to talk to everybody. And I think that that is a really good way forward. I think that that makes a lot of sense. In a sort of sense, I'm trying to work something out that I feel like needs to be done. And it's like, I want to try to get to know different audiences. Like that's what tour has always been about. Just getting to know the different kinds of audiences that exist so that I can deconstruct my big other or big others and sort of ground out. Like I something about me and I just don't like cameras and screens. I do it, but I hate it. And if there was like a proper venue where I could speak to people, I think I would use it. But I also, the thing I hate about it the most is like, there's a lot of it's laden with sort of presuppositions and assumptions about us having a common basis, about people in the live chat being a part of like a real audience, about whether or not you can actually follow what people are saying while having a split consciousness that's actively chatting in the live chat. There's just a lot of things that are weird, and a lot of it's like just this assumption that we should know each other, or that we know what's going on. Like it's all built to make it very easy for someone to be in this sort of guru influencer position and to sort of inculcate a certain kind of audience, right? And of course, like I feel those tendencies pulling at me, reshaping me. I felt it back when I was a Twitch streamer. That's when I said the medium's not just the message and the medium make the messenger, right? And so grounding out, to me, like touching grass, it actually means like going and getting acquainted with diverse audiences on the street, in the academy, at libraries, at coffee shops, at bars, in Oklahoma and New York and California, you know what I mean? And London and everywhere else that we went on tour. It's all part of that. And I feel like I can't not do that. And theorizing the Agora is kind of theorizing something that I've felt called to do. And so not everyone will feel called to do it. And people who take seriously my approach will often probably pay attention. And then they'll say, well, I might take something from that, but if I was to try to speak to people, it's going to be very different. And I think that's part of the point. It's kind of like the turn. It's like everyone's going to do it differently, but we want to have a meta conversation about why we do it differently. And so I'll read what Will shared here. He said he took a part of the Agora talk that I gave, which was my first seminar of 2025. So it's subscribers only, but I'll show you this little preview. Will shared this transcript of me saying, he said, let's say you have 30 seconds to 15 minutes to say your piece to the whole world before you die. And everything you say will be heard by everyone in existence for all time. Not like they'll hear it on repeat every day for their whole lives. That's not what I mean for all time. I mean that they can revisit it for all time. You are the mosquito in amber, frozen in cyber history. And you have a song to sing because you've been all over. You've been through a lot. And you might not be the most important person who's ever existed. And you might not know what your discourse is based in. But you know that there's something you need to say. What is it? This is your fleeting moment. 30 seconds to 15 minutes. That's the attention span you have that you can kind of suppose your audience has. On the far end of the scale, there's people who can pay attention and follow the thread for 15 minutes. At the other end of the scale, there's 30-second attention spans. What do you say in those 15 minutes? Do you keep repeating the same 30 seconds? Do you say the same thing, the same 30 seconds on repeat the whole time? I just wanted to incorporate that into my own closing statement because it's not, I think it would be easy to hear me say that and say that that's my main driver. I just wanted this to be a picture to kind of like force an extreme opposite of the tendency. I'm not saying that we should all prepare ourselves to actually speak this way. I'm definitely not saying that, but I am saying speaking to certain kinds of audiences too much, we can eventually just reach this point where we think we're talking to the people, right? When in reality, it's some consumer demographic for some kind of thing that we're doing. And so what's the opposite of getting audience captured? Well, that's part of the point of the Agora, and it's part of what we're doing with the critical media theory experiments that include stuff like the contradiction, Tribunal Zero, the turn, and the dredge, which we haven't really talked about publicly yet. We haven't even done a seminar session on it, but we will soon. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about that. And that this sort of meta conversation that I'm going to be having with Benjamin and Nance and Anne and Mikey and everyone else at TU for the next year, especially while we do the dredge and we do the Agoras, it's something I kind of want you all keen on. And so with me, at least, when you're thinking about these cartoon characters in the spectacle, like Trump and Musk, I want to always kind of bring it back to like these hypotheses about what it is that they're doing and what's working about it, but also how the means of what's working for them couldn't work for me. It couldn't work for you. We have a different horizon of possibilities. We have a different relation in production, right? Different class position. And so, and we also have different goals, right? And so, I just want to say it's really exciting to be getting into this phase of TU's development. And I kind of want to hear whatever you'll say about that, Benjamin, but also make sure to make a plug for your course before we close out, since it starts this Saturday.
Yes, my course is starting this Saturday. It's going to be at, is that 1 o'clock
Eastern?
Time?
1 o'clock Eastern.
Eastern time. 1 o'clock Eastern time. That's right. Yeah. So 1 o'clock Eastern, that is 12 o'clock Central, where I originally come from in Northwest Indiana. And I'm going to be talking about Plato. There's going to be an hour-long lecture, and then there will be a discussion. And those who are platinum level subscribers can write essays in response to a question that is given on the syllabus for the course. And I will read those papers and I will give you very, very detailed, thoroughgoing feedback. Then we will meet and do supervisions to discuss. That is all going to kick off this Saturday. Very excited about it. I love talking about Plato. It's one of my absolute favorite things to talk about. And the structure of my course has some relation to what you're talking about, Dave, with a desire to in some way interface with everybody or with everything. But rather than try to do everybody all at once, my structure is to break it into a bunch of different traditions and try to interface with each of those traditions. So in each month, we interface with a different tradition, or what I'm positing is potentially a different tradition, though they all have different relationships to each other. They're not completely separate. They don't exist in totally separate universes, and they all affect each other over time. They develop in relation to each other. But each month we go with one thinker and the tradition that they kick off, and we look at all of political theory from that particular point of view. And we don't focus on trying to negate it or just to say what's wrong with it. We look at why it is that this is an interesting position, why it is that this position emerges at the time that it does. What effects does the position have? What does it respond to? What does it end up ultimately becoming? How does the tradition respond in various ways to the things that happen to it over the course of human history? All of this will be discussed. So there is very much a way in which I think my course does interface with the Agora, in that each of the different theorists and each of the different topics is a different language for engaging with certain fundamental questions. And it's difficult to speak to all of these traditions at once, or to do that. The Mikey version of this is Tribunal Zero, which is to survive an interrogation from them all at once, right? Yours would be to speak to them all at once. His would be to survive an interrogation from them all at once. And then in my case, it's let's hop from one to one and pick up an ability to understand, interface with, and participate in each one. Let's make ourselves into people who can go into completely different rooms and understand what's going on in those different rooms and feel, if not fully at home, then at least able to have social relations and be conversant.
And we're starting with Plato's Republic. It's going to be this Saturday, January the 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Mountain Time for me. Benjamin, thank you. This was a lot of fun, and I think everybody really got a lot out of it, so appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And thanks for pushing on the Musk thing. It makes it fun.
Yeah. It definitely doubled our numbers. All right, everybody, take care. Oh, hold on. It's like lagging out here. Come on. Why does it always do this? I'll start it over. Underground exists to create the conditions necessary for rigorous thinking about the problems we face as humans. If you're serious about doing theory, making art, changing the world, or living well, we invite you to join us at theoryunderground.com/subscribe.
If you subscribe at theoryunderground.com, you'll get access to a package of courses, including my Intro to Fault Line Theory, which includes Intro to Nick Land and Intro to Slavoj Žižek. These courses are being woven with the 3 courses that take place on a month-to-month basis, spread out throughout the year of 2025. Those courses are 12 Core Concepts and the Fundamental Problems with the Situation Today with social theorist David McKerracher, 12 Essential Political Thinkers with political theorist Benjamin Studebaker, and the Philosophy of Nature with philosopher Nina Power.
The way these all get woven together at a deeper and more meta level is through the ongoing research seminars led by David McKerracher, Benjamin Studebaker, and Michael Downs, where they engage with one another's work by sharing developments from their own perspectives, theory, and research.
If you subscribe at higher levels and support our work, we'll support your development with bespoke teaching. Alone and unaided, we struggle to grasp our situation in its fullness and formulate a meaningful response. By working together and pooling our energies, we can do better. Join us at theoryunderground.com/subscribe.
There'll be 2 kinds of people in 10 years. Those who said, I knew all along Theory Underground was going to make this huge difference. Those are the people that are like Nance, who were on the sidelines at one point and then said, nah, I'm going to get in. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to go hard. And then there's another kind of person, a person who waits in the wings, who collects receipts, and who will say in 10 years, oh yeah, I was there. I saw that happen. And then they'll gossip monger. Listen, if you want to get involved, get involved. But if you're going to sit there in the bleachers, well, here's some popcorn. I hope you have fun.
Benjamin, we'll see you soon.
Yo,
before we go, Dave, I have to tell you, I got good news about that stuff I was emailing about.
You're emailing about stuff?
Not you. The emails that the conversation I was having.
Not you.
With that other guy. Yeah, our emails are horrible.
Yeah, we don't email each other. We've never emailed each other. Oh, it's good
through
it's
email.
Good though.
It's not a done deal, but it's looking good. So I'm stoked about that.
I just realized what you were talking about. Now I'm excited because that's badass.
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited. I hope it goes through. I can't express how badly I want this.
Yeah, dude. That's so cool. All right. We're not recording yet. We're just hanging. Welcome to the live stream, Nance. We've got it's like 600 people here. It's stupid. We should probably make
600
some
of them. What's up, everybody? Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Elon Musk is a fake gamer, and apparently he's doing Roman salutes.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. We live in the postmodern kaleidoscope of if you can dream it, you can achieve it. And someone's out there having bad dreams, dude.
Dude, I think we should start Sieg Heiling. I think that I forgot to tell Benjamin we should start doing it. That's the point of the Agora, is to like rally the Tiki Torch people, do the Sieg Heils. Yeah. I'm sorry, Jews. I'm sorry, every one of you. I know it's fucked up.
It's not have to do it. I'm sorry.
I'm way too casual about it, but you know, anti-Semitism. What can I say? Anyway, all right, guys. We denounce, we deny, and we don't downplay or dismiss.
Yeah.
But I am convinced something like that is beyond our ability to say whether we know one way or the other.
Yeah.
Like what it
100%.
Either on the one side and on the one. Well, actually, hold on. I'm going to click record. All right, everybody. Welcome to Why I Left. I'm David McKerracher. Sorry.
No,
Jesus Christ. Hold on. I'm going to start a new recording.
Here, I'll do it.
I'll do the signal wave.
Okay,
Yeah, then you do it. Okay.
Wait a minute. I'm doing it?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Why Us. I am Bryce Nance, and I'm here with
David McKerracher. And today,
and we're
talking about how
I didn't say why us, did I?
You did.
Oh, okay.
You did. And today, we're talking about why if you call Nance Bryce, we're going to block you.
I'm going to come to your house and make you feel the pain that I feel. Names are terrible, horrible, no good, very bad things. Names are some of the worst things the human beings ever came up with. And I hate them. So
don't call him that.
If you use, don't call me that.
Is there a way to segue that into what we were about to talk about as a follow-up to that Why Left episode and this whole thing about intent versus effect and the way that people do seemingly absurd things that game the attention economy, but also could be some kind of symbolic suicide with certain constituencies, but then maybe by doing that it's some kind of a costly signal, but also in a like reverse dog whistle way where it polarizes the extremes away from you or towards you, but in a way that endears you to the people who hate those extremes. Like that whole dynamic I was getting into with Benjamin, it all kind of spurred on by the supposed Sieg Heil from Musk. It's interesting because we're talking about names, and here's the segue. If you hate your name, if you've thought a lot about it, so for instance, my family calls me David, my friends call me Dave. And then at some point in college, I was like, I don't even care. And then I was like, fuck it, call me Lisa. I don't give a shit. And then I was like, fuck it, I'll just use like non-binary pronouns. And the point is like I was in this sort of experimental phase back before it was cool, guys, where I was just trying to like see how different ways of announcing oneself or of identifying changes other people's behavior towards you. And if people are treating you in a certain derogatory way and your name is Timmy, but your real name is Timothy, the name Timmy could actually be part of the problem because people have this idea of like Tiny Tim, the little Timmy. And so like there's something that I'm getting at here about like how names pick up connotations, but only for specific people in certain contexts. And then if you get too in your head about it, you get too neurotic, you start trying to control the message effects that you're sending out. But then also you can't really control those message effects that you're putting out, which was the whole point of Stoicism. And so I don't know. It's kind of like we find ourselves in the post-class fractured mass. We're all having identity crises online. Don't call Nance Bryce. Several people did that on tour, and every time I was always just kind of like look at them and like, you think you know what to call him better than me? Have you not? Have you ever?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard me refer to him as that?
One thing, like a moment that I look back and smile on, very fondly was with Suzanne at your wedding. She was calling me Lance and Vance, and like she couldn't get it right, and like I didn't care, and I never corrected her, and I was like I was just like, I don't give a shit. And then when she finally was like, oh, it's Nance, and then she's like, why didn't you correct me? And I was like, I don't care. Like I know you're addressing me, like. We are engaged in this Congress. I really don't give a shit about the label. I'm not attached to it. I'm kind of divested from the identity. And I do believe it's necessary to divest from your identifications. Of course, we can never achieve objectivity. And like we're always caught in this hermeneutic circle. And we spend a lot of time thinking about this. This is why we're going about things in the way we're going about things phenomenologically. But I think a huge step is to divest from your identifications. And the reason I look back fondly on that moment is because it's like proof to myself that like, oh, I'm doing a good job with that. I similarly went through like a gender fuck phase where I was like, don't call me a man. And I still do feel cheated by the category man. Like I'm more than that. Just like I'm more than my name. Like I'm so much more than all these things. But also you have to understand that that will never register in the way I want it to for anyone else. So I just have to have faith in the people with whom I'm engaged that they do see something in me, or else why would they keep coming back around and working with me or hanging out with me or engaging in this approximation of love that I think is the foundation for anything, any project or work or anything. So it's, the ego thing. Like you just got to let it go, dude. Like intent matters from the perspective of the one doing the action. Intent is all you have. You cannot control reception. You can't control interpretation. You can't really control messaging in this way. So intent is what matters. So you should spend your time caring about your intentions. And not trying to like figure out and suss out other people's intentions, but having faith. And if you just don't want to fuck with people, don't fuck with people. Like instead of playing weird games with people, like I'm just not going to fuck with that dude. There's so many awesome people who like give me what I'm looking for. Like I'm going to engage with the people with whom I share trust and respect and love and all this stuff. But we can't do that in the post-class fractured mass. We are living in this kind of postmodern future where you have to announce yourself. Your reputation does necessarily precede you. So if you're trying to talk to people, you do have to be concerned with optics and messaging and this and that. But you can go about it in a more methodological way, which we're trying to develop, rather than like getting caught in the kind of like idiosyncratic like death spiral of like, oh, people don't really see the real me. And it's like, yeah, dude, in fact, there is no real you in this fetishized kind of objective sense. So I love that we kind of are circling, I guess, intention.
Let me take it back to the last episode. I have the quote right here. As Bourdieu said, this strategy of manipulating one's self-image can be very sophisticated when handled by an institution aware of itself and aware of the fact that its power base is rooted in the symbolic. Now, what happens when the ways that we've learned to identify ourselves through these institutions are no longer working, or at least producing the kinds of effects that they presumably used to have? Is it a grab all, throw whatever you want at the wall, see what sticks kind of approach? And what about for us who are doing stuff in institutions or in the non-institutions? What about us who are out here between the attention economy, academia, and activism, trying to do something different from those three things? And what are, I guess when we're coming to naming, right? I changed the title of this to Naming is Negating. This is a famous Kierkegaard quote, right? When you name me, you negate me. Well, yeah, but also the person at the store shouldn't know my true essence. Shouldn't know about my higher human capacities. The person, the checkout person, the bartender can know my name. Doesn't need to fucking get me right. What is it that makes us feel this need to get gotten right? But then this gets to the heart of the frustration that we were going to talk about in this episode, a very short episode on. There's two kinds of people that are fucking annoying, man. And one is trying to sun me or peer me. And the other one is trying to give me unsolicited advice. I have a fucking counsel. I have a bunch of people giving me advice and I trust them. And if you aren't in the wheelhouse, but you're acting like you know my wheelhouse enough to be able to give me advice, and you don't, because everything everybody says in the comment section, it's already shit I thought of 100 times, then it is annoying. But then that also turns back on me. Why am I trying to control for effects? When misrecognition is cooked into not just language, not just naming, but especially the medium.
Yeah. Well, so
I'm going to listen while I refill my water downstairs. All right.
Yeah. So on the the bartender or the clerk at 7-Eleven or whatever has to get my name right. They have to recognize my true essence. That comes along with like the ideology of the individual and the myth of the individual, where we are told that self-actualization is the moral thing to do, and if you don't follow these 3 easy steps to self-actualization, then there's something like morally wrong with you. And that goes hand in hand with like neoliberalism, and other like social technology as well. But like we are inundated with injunctions to self-actualize and be your true self and stand up for what you believe in and make an impact and be the change you want to see in the world, and all these things that always come back to this ideology of the individual. And we're trapped in that. Like, so you have to go through a moment of kind of subjective destitution. You have to realize that the myth of the individual is bullshit in order to kind of get over it and be able to divest from your identification. So I don't think this should become like a moral thing, like so many things are wont to do. Like it's like, oh, this is the wrong thing to do, and because we're saying it's wrong, we're going to moralize it. That is the problem with the quote unquote woke left, where people start blaming, or not blaming, but people start saying that ignorance is like moral unworthiness. And I don't mean ignorance in a derogatory way, but ignorance just in the way of like, most people are just trapped in that world and they're stuck in necessity. They're stuck in scarcity. They're working all the time. They don't have time to interrogate and investigate. So they just go with the flow, and they have been convinced that they are supposed to do this self-actualization thing. So you shouldn't blame people, and you shouldn't turn it into like we're so much better than these people.
Right.
Because that sucks.
Look, but we never have been. We've since day one, and this is the tie-in to what I think the big header of this conversation is supposed to be course-gated content. What that means, course-gated not content, course-gated forums, right?
Yep.
Which the point is like, no, I don't want to be out here being like, oh yeah, I'm just surrounded by people who think they already know what we're doing and that they get it, and that because they heard us talk for 6 hours, now they're in on our last 500 hours of research and conversations that we've been doing. No, I don't want to have to just be a realist and come to terms with that situation, because it's a stupid, shitty situation that coddles people of all ages who take the medium to be some kind of transparent communication device in this like old sort of analogy based in like some previous world conditions, right? Like they're thinking, oh, well, more people are, it's like that guy you're arguing with on Substack and then you got embarrassed and took that down or whatever. But like he's like, what? All it means is that more people are communicating than ever before. That's all it means. That's all the internet means. It's like, bro.
I didn't take anything down. It's
I thought, the episode? I thought
I said I felt like shit about it.
Oh, and I thought your most recent episode said you took it down because you didn't like arguing with people. Oh, okay, it's still
that was a previous episode. No, I left that there because I do think it's instructive. So the reason I felt like shit for arguing with that guy is because I insulted him personally, because I got invested to the point where I insulted him, and I felt stupid for insulting him, but like the argument is important. And so I was like, well, I can look like an asshole.
It's true.
Because this conversation is exactly what we're talking about. Like, we're not communicating. This is not expression. This is all prehistory in a sense.
Right. This is prehistory, and we think that we're at the same water hole, but we aren't. And we're literally doing different things. But because there is this leveling effect that is catered to a customer experience to make everybody feel like not only are they all equals before the commodity form, but also like, oh, anything can be had, anything can be understood instantaneously.
Yep.
And nothing's worth committing to and digging to the bottom of, because by the time you get there, everybody else has already moved on to the next thing that's trending, right?
Now this. And that guy and I were arguing about like performative communication and like I did the thing, like I did the performative gesture through complaining about performative gestures.
Yeah.
Like I was doing the thing that I was complaining about. But also like I was memeing on myself. Like in the note, I basically went up and put my foot in my mouth and said, "Isn't it stupid how everybody puts their foot in their mouth? But look at me with my foot in my mouth." And then the guy kind of came back and took it elsewhere. And then I got upset because I was like, dude, you're not, like, you didn't hear what I'm saying. This is an example of exactly what I'm talking about, and you're doing the thing. So I got pissed and,
dude, I just realized something.
What?
This guy's like a reoccurring character on this podcast because we already talked about him in the first episode. When I said that this guy made a 10-minute video and the whole substance of that video was, you should listen to him because he was right about podcasts being a big deal. And, maybe it's time people start listening to the people who are right about things. That's what he closed it out on.
He's like a no, I was gonna say he's a pet of ours, but that's I don't want to.
No, he's not ours. He's not a pet. I take no responsibility for that.
He's a recurring character. Yeah. He's a recurring character. But yeah, like I am frustrated with people taking the medium at face value and people thinking they are engaged in discourse when we're all just doing this thing where we're ice skating along the surface of the lake. The reason Theory Underground is course gated is so we can have shared grounds, shared reference, shared meaning. So we're mutually intelligible to each other. So we can actually have conversations. We're not just like performing for the algorithm. We're actually trying to have actual conversations. And we spend a lot of time doing public facing stuff. And it's just, it gets exhausting when people do this thing where they're like, even now in the chat, there's people, well, Nance, you're wrong about this. And like, I could derail and say, actually, I'm not wrong. And let me explain to you how and why I'm not wrong. But now is not the time for that because you and I are trying to get somewhere. But it's exhausting. That just takes so much energy. And I barely engage. Like I barely respond to people online, and the little that I do takes so much energy. We're trying to create conditions of possibility for discourse, and then there's so many people who are convinced that they are already engaged in discourse, and it's like, dude, we're speaking a different language, a completely different language.
Yeah, and you get these people who are like, it's just like, I don't know what it is about the medium that makes it so that people think that they're able to actually respond from a live stream chat, or that that's a serious avenue for engagement. But I also want you all to know, I'm not saying that you might not be the coolest fucking person in the world, or that you might not have some great point. I think there's a way of taking this, point about everything being leveled and turned into now this, customer satisfaction, blah, 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 where people think that I'm saying, you're not my equal, you're inferior to me. And the answer is, no, I don't think that. The point is, you are not my equal in this thing that I've thought about obsessively for the last 10 years that I am here to talk about. And if you're not here to take notes and try to get on the level, I don't care. Because guess what? There's lots of normal people down the street from me. There's lots of really cool looking people that I see walk by my house, or I see them on a regular basis at the coffee shop. There's lots of really cool people at my jujitsu gym. I'm officially like, I've friended a bunch of people doing Muay Thai and boxing as well. They're cool people. I like them. I also like the theater community. There's a bunch of people there. There's a lot of local people that I like at this sort of level where it's like, if I needed to go do something social and they're doing something, and I felt like, yeah, I kind of want to go do a social thing, then I would go. And I know who those people are, and I know that I would be welcome. I'm not desperate. I know exactly where I'm welcome, and there's a lot of places locally where I can immediately go to. But there's a reason why I left a big social scene back in the day. It's because I realized it's futile and there's nothing new under the sun, and it's just a sort of buzzed blur of getting tipsy and talking excitedly about nothing. And I've applied the sober filter to my life because, well, I don't know about you all, but somewhere around the ages of 25 through 30, you go, okay, I need to make something of this, right? And for me, part of making something of this thing I've been doing in philosophy, theory, and politics is to be like, there's something more than what people see coming out of the academy or going on in the academy. There's also something more than what people see going on at the attention economy. And there's something more than what people see in activism today. That there is some kind of way of doing this thing that's more than a degree, that's more than 100,000 subscribers, that's more than getting a bunch of people to come to a protest and feel good, like they somehow moved the needle forward or whatever. No, there's something else that can be done. And you have to undergo subjective destitution at the level of the academy and at the level of the medium and at the level of the protest or local organizing to come to a point where you can even appreciate where we're coming from. And then you have all these people come around. They haven't undergone some subjective destitution in any one of those three areas. And they wouldn't, because of that, they wouldn't be monks in the monastery. They would be novices. We would shave their fucking heads and they wouldn't be allowed to talk for the first year. And then if you fucking fall asleep while I'm talking, I'm going to hit you with a rod. Sorry, this is the monastery. We're trying to get serious here. Okay? Now do your chores and shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear what you have to say. That doesn't mean that you don't know a lot. It just means get on the level. There's a level. I'm so tired of talking to people who are uninterested in getting on the level. But the thing is that's not how I feel about normies. That's not how I feel about the laity. That's not how I feel about the weekender who comes to a philosophy club and just wants to talk about the book that he just read. No, my heart goes out to those people. It's the me who was 25 through 30 who at some point just needed someone to say, all this is not going anywhere. But then again, of course, me going back to myself in the past and saying those things wouldn't do the trick either. I had to just experience something. And there's not a way to set up walls between us and the world that allows us to sort of open the little door, not the big gate that allows the horde to come rushing in, but the little tiny door. And you say, it's the eye of the needle. That's what they used to call it. And you say, hey, yeah, come on in, one at a time. One at a time. Let's get to know you. Let's vet you. Okay, how did you like the CMT course? How did you like the idea of the university course? How did you like the PMC course? Oh, okay, we preempted all of that, so you weren't paying attention. Everything you're saying was preempted and you're acting like we didn't say that. We said it. Now go watch it again, because the way you're engaging is presupposing that we didn't say something that we said repeatedly. So go do it again. And at the point that we can all finally agree what's been said and where we're actually at, we can actually kind of open it up and let people in. Right. And it's like, so I'll quilt that all and pass it back to you with what I raised earlier. Course gated forums. The reason I can't, it's just one of these things where I can't communicate to you guys the amount of effort it took for me, a non-tech person, to build an app. Yeah. I cannot communicate to you guys as a non-tech person the amount of work it took to make that original website. But what it was doing was making it so that you couldn't engage in certain conversations until you did the prerequisites. And we had a friend like a mutual. Like I stayed at his house. Like he's a cool guy. I genuinely like him. But he always wanted to talk about critical media theory, but then he wasn't taking the critical media theory seminar with us. And I was just like, dude, why are you constantly wanting to talk about this stuff, but you won't try to get on the same basis with us? And I think where he was coming from is somewhere similar. You're just saying someone else was saying something similar, which is like, I don't want my thinking to just be Theory Underground's thinking. I want to have my own ideas. And it's like, yeah, but you know what Derrida did before he deconstructed the canon? He learned the canon. And there was a canon. There were shared reference points. One of the messages of the medium in the post-class fractured mass is that there is no canon. I said this in the lecture. People aren't taking that seriously enough. They're not really sitting with it. Now, I'm letting the couple people who are annoying bend the entire conversation their way, when in reality, we've got a bunch of homies who are down for the cause and going hard as shit, and they fucking know that there's a bunch of shit they don't know, and that most of the time when we're speaking at a certain level, and that there's another level, and they can get to it, but they got to go through the backlog. But the thing is the course-gated forum idea was supposed to counter certain tendencies of the medium, and now here we are. We're over 2 years later. We scrapped that website. We scrapped that app. It couldn't do what I needed it to do. Now I've spent
great cost
of time, energy, and of money. And now I have, I just took a huge cut in my paycheck by like $1,500 last month because of the migrations from the old site to the new site. And that's fine. It's something I'm willing to do because I don't care. If you're just subscribing and you're not paying attention to what we're doing, I'll cut you off. I don't care. If you just want your identity to be somehow like quilted by, oh yeah, well I subscribe to TU. Yeah, well, do you pay attention? Do you follow along? Do you try to get on the wavelength? Because if not, I didn't build this for you. And the people who take up the most time and attention and energy are the people who are assuming that they've already done it, that it's all done already because they paid a certain amount of money. Now they're here for it. And now we all know. So course gated forums, it's a dream. It's still possible. We could have it by the end of this year. It's just going to take some programming. And right now I'm just spending an absorbent amount of money trying to get the basic framework in place, and then once that's done, we can build the forums atop it. But for now, it's all on Discord, though, guys. That's why I'm going crazy. I fucking hate Discord. I fucking hate Discord. I cannot stand Discord, and I cannot stand people who seem at home on Discord. So when Nina Powers dropped into the Discord, and she's all like, "Oh, I feel like I'm in some like gamer thing, or like this is all like a bunch of teenagers." I was like, yeah, that's why I fucking hate it, Nina. But there's something nice about the fact that the forums allow us to use voice messages in responses in threads. That's not possible on any other site. So we're using this for now. And whenever people drop into the server and we wave hello and it uses these stupid little cartoons and all this, I'm just reminded this is not our home. This is not where we want to be. And then we have people hopping in the server with anime avatars that look like fucking child porn. And I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ, you fucking losers. I don't care how famous you are. That shit's fucking pathetic, dude. Shit's fucking pathetic. Anime's fucking lame. Grow the fuck up. You're like a fucking 35-year-old with a 14-year-old heart on. Get over it, dude. Get the fuck over it. You know what I'm not doing? Out here trancing about like I did when I was fucking 14 or 18. Jesus fucking Christ. Discord, man. The fucking worms of the internet are all on Discord. I swear to God. And I'm not saying that if you get some enjoyment from Discord that you should feel bad about yourself or that I hate you. Just be aware it's testing my patience. Stop acting like we're fucking communicating when we're not.
That's the thing. So this excess, this surplus of frustration that you're expressing right now, and I'm laughing. I think some people in the chat might be laughing. I think some people in the chat might be maybe not laughing. No,
I know for a fact that at least 3 people right now are gathering all their like anime and they're going out back and they're lighting it on fire and they're all embarrassed and they're like, oh shit, I hope Dave never finds out.
So, But it's a surplus of frustration. I do hope nobody. First of all, I hope nobody takes any of this personally.
Who gives a fuck?
It comes from the frustration of being in this medium. We are fish, and this is the sea that we are in right now. And this sea stifles us. This sea suffocates us. This sea is slowly poisoning us. But we are all convinced that it is the pathway to liberation because we're trapped in the scarcity mindset. We have to deal with necessity. We don't have the freedom to interrogate and investigate. All these things, like we can do the apologia, and I'm here for it, but also there comes a time when it's just like, fuck it, dude. Like, do the hard thing. Do the fucking hard thing. And like, become a flying fish and fly up out of the fucking water. Like, we all know that the water, that this sea is fucking toxic. We know it. It's become, like, that's been captured itself. Like, this post-ironic complaining about everything and talking about how the world is ending and how the world is so inhuman and machinic and everything is bad for us. And, oh, there's so much social media content that it is about how poisonous social media content is. Like, it's come all the way back around, and it's doing this self-critical hipster, oh, woe is me, the world has ended, but let's have a good time while we're here. No, let's not have a fucking good time while we're here. This place is fucking killing us, and we're not communicating. We can perform, and we can go through the motions, and we can seek out this weak, fucking hollow version of self-actualization that I rail against when I am railing against self-actualization. I'm not saying don't fucking self-actualize. I'm saying don't be content with what's on offer. There's a way to do it that's embodied and that's real and that actually fucking matters, and that doesn't take place on social media, and that doesn't take place in these commoditized fucking social groupings where, oh, look, I'm a fucking skateboarder. I have spent so much of my life dedicated to skateboarding, but I also don't give a fuck about the quote-unquote skateboarding community. I don't derive my sense of self from my perceived status in a fucking commoditized popularity contest. I derive my sense of self from the concrete relations I have with concrete others. And that's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to develop a framework where we can operationalize concrete relations to push the pile forward, because it is true that the world did end already, and we are all slowly fucking dying. And we are not satisfied to be hipsters and smoke cigarettes while the world burns down around us. So again, I do hope no one takes anything personally. I'm a sloppy, slovenly, disgraceful, degenerate piece of shit too. So it's not about you suck. It's about the fact that there's more. There's more for every single one of us. But it's contingent on us being able to do the hard thing.
Do you think that, like, there's a sort of level that a certain person is capable of reaching on Twitter, Discord, Instagram, whatever? There's like a certain level of, I guess, the experience of dialogue. Like you have different people. So you have people who are like hooked into the platform at the level of their drive, where it's like they hate it, but they keep doing it. And they're like edging on symbolic suicide on these platforms versus people they might even be friends with, who are just like, just precious souls who are just like, they just think that they're having real dialogue. And the thing is maybe that's infantilizing for me to say precious souls, and what I'm trying to ask here is, what if there is like a meaningful kind of discourse that people are achieving on these various platforms, because it's not at the level of their drive, it's at the level of their desire that they're hooked in here. So they have a different relation to the medium. It has a different effect on their perception and interpretation. And maybe something about their chemistry makes it so that they're better able to have real conversations in that medium, or at least get the simulation of that, right?
Yes. But also, Theory Underground is a hostile space for those people. So
yeah, dude, actually, those are the people at the concert who are just standing elbow to elbow, and they get upset when we open up the pit.
Yeah, like it is. It like we're trying to do something different. So it will always be compared. It will always be kind of seen in relation to other things. We will always be compared to certain other fucking theory podcasts or theory publishing houses or theory spaces online. Always. Necessarily. That's just the way it is. But we're doing something different. We'll always be compared to art spaces too, and like all these other things, because this is the language that people have coming to it. And that's fine. And it's not like fuck you, but like there comes a point when people need to realize like, oh, this is different. And when you realize that, like, don't try to make it what you thought it was.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. When people
and
get
also
upset.
Don't be mad about that.
Yeah.
Don't be mad about that. This is a project that comes out of decades of consideration of heart, soul, body, and mind that have gone into, and you can read about it in Waypoint and in Time Energy. And you can research it if this is something you don't understand on the 2 years worth of backlog content that's already come out. But like this is not just another theory podcast or whatever. This is a real thing. And guess what? It already exists. We just haven't got there yet.
I mean, we've done a lot. It's kind of like one of the cool things about the shorter term kind of organizing that we do. Most people are stuck between immediacy and too long-term utopian. We're like always 3 to 6 months or a year out. And so when people are trying to prefigure the world they want to live in, and so that they fucking, they try to be as androgynous as possible and share everything that they have with everybody and spend all their time with homeless people because, they're like, I'm just trying to prefigure the world I want to live in. And they think that that's like their radical politics or whatever. It's like, yeah, but they're trying to prefigure utopia. And we're realists about capital, not capitalist realists, which means we understand anything that works while you're in capitalism will be co-opted by capitalism. And the example we used on that phone call yesterday is all these motherfuckers who think that their radical anarchist hacking programming work that they're doing is like somehow resisting capital when if it works, gets co-opted by Amazon and Google anyway.
Yep.
It's just like, guys, you're not out ahead of it and with that kind of prefiguration. But what I'm trying to say is that there's a kind of prefiguring work that we're doing where it's like, this shit's more real than just a hyperstition. We have gone on 2 tours. We are world touring now. So next time someone compares us to an indie book publisher, say, what's the world tour they did? Next time someone compares us to a podcast, say, what's the world tour that they did? Next time somebody says, oh, there's these people doing really cool stuff this year, ask them, oh, did they do 2 tours across the United States, make a documentary and do the Agora? Have they invented something like the Agora? Have they been experimenting with that?
Yeah.
Have they been doing alien anthropology? No? Oh, okay. Well then, you guys all have fun over here on the fucking peanut gallery. But in the meantime, what the hell's going on over there? There's something else. And so, yeah, but all that, following from me saying, I understand it's stupid for me to care. I understand it's stupid for me to react against it. I understand it's stupid for me to try to control for how other people act or, perceive. But here's what I'm mad about. I'm mad about the fact that I've spent 2 years of trying to set up course gated forums, and then we still don't get to have them, right? That shit was supposed to be That shit was supposed to be automated. And now I'm sitting here going, it can't be. Fuck. It might be able to be, but also automating it could create more problems than not. I think the first thing that it could, because there's a level, I think that what I didn't realize in the last 2 years is that I genuinely have to work with people on a case by case basis, because Theory Underground, we have kept it small enough. You know, I think all these people giving advice about how to grow the thing don't realize that I push the brake pedal 50 times a week. Like, we are growing at the rate that I want to grow. That has not changed. We have not sped up the growth faster than I wanted to, and we haven't slowed it down slower than I've wanted to. And I do hit the brakes
I'd say
50 times a week.
Yeah, I'd say there, if anything, there have been moments where it's like, oh, we need to not do this thing because this is causing danger to speed up and go faster than intended.
Yeah, there's a reason I haven't been on Joe Rogan. There's a reason for that. I think people just think I just haven't gotten my opportunity. No, bitch, I make things happen when I want them to happen. Stop acting like everything's chance out here. No, I know how to act on the world. Okay, so don't give me that. No, dude. I want to keep it small enough. There's a reason that, you want examples. The immediate one that comes to mind. We're about to have Haas back on, but guess what? We haven't even published those episodes with Haas yet. I don't want to grow this thing too fast, especially not with tankies flooding the ranks. Yeah, it's fine to have a couple token tankies. You can all be my little fucking weirdo token tankies as long as you're like 1 out of 100. But if I'm gonna have like fucking 20 within a year, I'll walk away and go do something else. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to surround myself with people who think that history interpretation scolding lessons are somehow gonna get us there. Right? So, yeah, I just need to blow off the steam. And the fact is I don't want to convince the people who don't get it. The people who don't get it don't fucking get it. And I'm going to fucking talk shit about them until I don't have to anymore. But the people who do get it feel my frustration.
It's very frustrating. I'm excited was it Friday? We had that great fucking call with a new friend of the fucking Theory Underground. Like, I'm so, like, there's so much. Like, that's gonna be great. And that conversation, not only am I excited to have him on, but the conversation went so well. Like, I already know this is the beginning of a beautiful relationship. The fact, there's so much dope shit that goes on, and there's so much work that goes into everything that has happened so far, everything that is coming soon, and all the things that are, far off in the future, I guess, depending on your definition of far off. But like, the amount of work that has gone into just here right now, just this very conversation you and I are having right now, the amount of work that's gone into it to bring us here is astounding. And it blows my mind that there are people who seem to like lack the equipment for understanding that. Like, I don't know. It's like, I don't want to say things. I don't want to be, you know what I'm saying? But like, this is fucking astounding. Like, the amount of shit that goes into Theory Underground. Find me somewhere else that rises to the level. And I don't want to do this. I don't want to do the comparison thing. But maybe sometimes it is important to point it out, like, hey, this doesn't just happen. Like, these conversations, these events don't just grow on trees. Like, they do come at great personal cost.
Yeah. No, like the JP Con, my first excursion into the medium, my first excursion into the medium, my first way of acting on the medium and trying to actually insert myself into history. Like, it produced the Zizek Peterson debate. We lit a fire under Peterson's feet, highlighted the hypocrisy of him dodging debates with Doug. And when I say we, I mean I fucking held that line and I drove it, and I did it in a weird obsessive way that, like, some people who are tourists or casual consumers of the medium just in my immediate vicinity, they didn't get it until it happened. And some people didn't get it until a year later. Right? And it's just like, yeah, well, that was nothing compared to what we've achieved in the last year alone. Like, nothing. I'm sorry, Zizek and Peterson, I mean, they say some interesting things sometimes. I've been altered by my contact with the two of them in the spectacle. But I'm sorry, like, they ain't doing what we're doing. That's why Coda was in the Discord saying, oh, is the Agora Zizekian and the black box is Landian? And my voice message response was just like, dude, I now I'm going to say something that's completely different than what I actually said, but kind of what I'm getting at is in that response, I'm trying to get at, like, I'm sorry, like, are they organizers? Do they come from poverty and blue collar work?
No, they're fancy assholes who eat grapes all day.
Yeah, I'm sorry. They drink wine and don't think about where stuff comes from. They're really good at thinking about certain things, but they've bracketed out the mode of production, right?
Where do things fucking come from?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just not the same. Organizational concepts are not the same thing as concepts from regular theory. When we're doing Bildung with stuff like the Agora and the Dredge and contradictions, I mean, we're talking time energy is a Bildung. This is different. It is a different thing, and you cannot literally understand. You literally cannot understand in the pit of your stomach, like, what these concepts are or what their potential might be if you haven't burned out on actually trying to organize in the real world. And if you're out here and you've been successful in your organizing, and now you're a fucking Jacobinite, or you're a fucking DSAer, and you think, oh yeah, I've been successful here, this is where it's at. Cool. Talk to me in 5 years and let me know about how right I was, because that's what I just got last week. In fact, in terms of why us, the chair of the Marxist organization that I left messaged me 2 weeks ago and said that over the last 5 years, he's come to realize, like, I was right. And what in particular this chair of the Marxist organization said he was right about is that putting Marxism, Leninism, or any other ism associated with Bolshevism, which would include MLM, blah, 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 putting that up does not attract people who are serious about organizing. It attracts history nerds who are mad at their dads. And often they have borderline personality disorder, bipolar, schizophrenia, or a drug addiction, and they're just able to show up to meetings and talk about this one thing. And outside of that, they are not just incompetent, they're dangerous. And what they do is they ruin not just organizations, but any possibility of getting more serious people in the room. He said, yeah, because I told him that when I left. And he said that in the last 5 years, he's realized it's true, right? So it's like, okay, look, now, could I be doing exactly what that our little pet, example is doing? People should listen to the person who was right about something. No, but let me know if you left a serious political organization in the last 5 years and then the leader of that org said that. I mean, just let me know. But I don't think so. So, and then, I got it from some big creators recently too, who are backpedaling their entire approach that they've had for the last 5 years. And they're like, the word left does not function the way I thought it did. I was thinking in this sort of literalist way, this historical way. I wasn't thinking about how it functions in the spectacle to select and exclude at a non-explicit level. So anyway, guys, this was fun. we're about to hop into the back end. We're going to have a conversation with the alien anthropology cohort that is a part of developing the conditions for the agora and experimenting on the post-class fractured mass. What does that mean? Well, step one, before we actually take off on this tour, is to develop a serious research instrument. Like a sociological instrument, but one that is based in PCFM pilled. What does that mean? Well, we're going to go figure it out. But basically, the alien anthropology cohort is developing questions for the students in my 2 sociology classes on campus. Those 2 courses started last week, Introduction to Sociology and Sociological Communication, both of which I'm just doing what I want in and teaching what I'm interested in teaching. Yeah. And I kind of just get to because the standards... Anyway, there's no oversight, and they trust me, and I think that I think they're correct to trust me. I get to do what I want. The fact is I could just watch movies with them all semester and give them all an A, but no, I'm turning it into a serious thing, and part of it is like we're not going to talk about sociology without doing sociology. We're going to do sociology on ourselves. We're going to do sociology on the people at Theory Underground. Theory Underground people are going to do sociology on the people in the classrooms. And everyone's going to mix it up in some discussions and some lectures, but also both sides, TU and my actual students at Boise State here, on both sides are helping me develop the research instrument we're going to use for alien anthropology on the post-class fractured mass during the tours of 2025 in March and in September. So, yeah, that's what Nance and I are going to go brainstorm right now. And we're going to be hopefully joined by a few of the people who've been along for a while with the seminars, with the courses, especially with the stuff I've done on socioanalysis, especially with the stuff we've done on Why Us with classification struggles in Bourdieu. Because if your research instrument is not coming from a place of field analysis, in part, if you're not doing socioanalysis on yourself to counter social engineering, and if you're not developing questions that bypass opinions and beliefs and instead gets at the field itself, well, then what the fuck are you doing, guys? Come on, stop wasting your time. And so I'm stoked to see you all on the back end. Nancy, you get the last word.
Yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out with us while we talked about some stuff. I think getting outside of this kind of objectified, fetishized individual identifications, reputation, what gets called ego, blah blah blah. I think that's, I guess, what we were talking about. I hope no one's feelings get hurt, but also at the same time, I really don't give a shit because I don't know you and you're not a concrete other. And while I don't want to upset and offend people, I have more important things to worry about. So while I do care. I don't want to be offensive. The real work is going on over here. This is what is actually going. Like, this is not just a social thing. We're not just here to have drinks and drink wine and talk about fancy stuff. Like, we're actually doing work. So if you enjoy this stuff, and if you are interested in doing more, and if you are interested in joining the conversation, that is the way to do so. Not the comment section, not the live chat. But if you're just here having fun because you enjoy it, hell yeah, fucking high five, Wu-Tang.
Here's
you
some
make
popcorn.
this shit possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have all the popcorn and this and that. But I'm excited for what is happening with Theory Underground, with these university students, with alien anthropology, with taking this shit on tour again. Like, there's real dope shit going on. And if you're down for that, come on over. And if you just like this stuff, that's fucking cool too.
Yeah. Also, I just want to say there's a kind of person who's thinking about doing their own media project, and so that they are seeing how we experiment with the medium. They get a lot out of that, even though they're not convinced by anything else what we do. We've got other people not convinced by our ideological presuppositions or our operating assumptions, as I would call them, because I think it's more methodological than ideology. But getting something from it. And then I think people just getting something from the entertainment of it, that's valid too, guys. I don't ever want the people who are here for the entertainment of it to think that we're talking about you, because that's valid. And I watch a ton of shit that I'm non-committal about, and that's totally fine. So anyway, it is what it is, and I'm gonna roll this PSA. And if you're a subscriber, or if you're part of my seminar or course and you want to hop in, you know where the link is. It's on your profile at theoryunderground.com. Peace.
Peace.
Theory Underground exists to create the conditions necessary for rigorous thinking about the problems we face as humans. If you're serious about doing theory, making art, changing the world, or living well, we invite you to join us at theoryunderground.com/subscribe.
If you subscribe at theoryunderground.com, you'll get access to a package of courses, including my Intro to Fault Line Theory, which includes Intro to Nick Land and Intro to Slavoj Žižek. These courses are being woven with the 3 courses that take place on a month-to-month basis, spread out throughout the year of 2025. Those courses are 12 Core Concepts and the Fundamental Problems with the Situation Today with social theorist David McKerracher, 12 Essential Political Thinkers with political theorist Benjamin Studebaker, and the Philosophy of Nature with philosopher Nina Power.
The way these all get woven together at a deeper and more meta level is through the ongoing research seminars led by David McKerracher, Benjamin Studebaker, and Michael Downs, where they engage with one another's work by sharing developments from their own perspectives, theory, and research.
If you subscribe at higher levels and support our work, we'll support your development with bespoke teaching. Alone and unaided, we struggle to grasp our situation in its fullness and formulate a meaningful response. By working together and pooling our energies, we can do better. Join us at theoryunderground.com/subscribe.
There'll be 2 kinds of people in 10 years. Those who said, I knew all along Theory Underground was going to make this huge difference. Those are the people that are like Nance, who were on the sidelines at one point and then said, nah, I'm going to get in. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to go hard. And then there's another kind of person, a person who waits in the wings, who collects receipts, and who will say in 10 years, oh yeah, I was there. I saw that happen. And then they'll gossip monger. Listen, if you want to get involved, get involved. But if you're going to sit there in the bleachers, well, here's some popcorn. I hope you have fun.